Mayor Denner, the public is in.
Okay, thank you, City Manager Seisland. I call this meeting to order of the City Council for the City of Grosse Pointe Park. Before we call the roll, we do have an excused absence this evening, and City Manager Seisland has a statement to that effect. Nick?
Thank you, Mayor Denner. Good evening, Council, Mayor, and City Administration. This letter comes from Vikas Raylan, our council member. I want to thank you for your prayers and well wishes while I'm recovering from this 3-week medical adventure. Some of you know that I was hit with a severe virus, non-COVID related, which landed me in the ICU for 10 days. Thanks to my amazing doctors, superhero nurses, strong and supportive family and friends, I managed to fight off this unexplained illness. I am now on doctor-ordered extreme rest, focused recovery, and reduced stress for some time to improve my overall cardiac functions. I apologize for any missed emails or communication in the last few weeks and plan to catch up soon. It is expected to be a few months until I can completely get back to my active lifestyle, but I'll be working hard to get there. Thank you for your support, and I hope to be better energized for our next meeting. Sincerely, Vikas.
Thanks, Nick. And we clearly all wish Vikas all the best and for a speedy and complete recovery. He's gone through really a rough 3 weeks, as he described, and I think he's got some recovering to do based on his comments, and I'm sure he'll appreciate our continued thoughts and prayers. With that, let's move on with the meeting. And Clerk Blayhut, please call the roll.
Councilmember Reed,
Here.
McConnell,
Here.
Hodges,
Here.
Robson,
Here.
Blewett,
Here.
and Mayor Denner.
Here. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First item on the agenda is the approval of the consent agenda. Council, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there support?
I'll support.
Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Reed,
Mayor,
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem.
discussion at all? Discussion?
The consent agenda, once it's together, is really an up or down vote.
Okay. There's a typo, but I'll discuss that with the.
Yeah, minor typos you can handle with the clerk.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Reed,
Yes.
McConnell,
Yes.
Hodges,
Yes.
Robson,
Yes.
Blewett,
Yes.
and Mayor Denner.
Yes, motion passes. Thank you. Next, we have public comment agenda items. And for this, I'm going to turn it over to our city manager for any written comment and to manage any verbal comment. Nick?
Okay, thank you, Mayor Denner. I do have several written comments that I'll read before you tonight, and we have several non-agenda comments as well later. So after I read the written comments, I'll ask them for a voice comment. This comment comes from Carol Steen in Grosse Pointe Park. While watching the tail end of the last council meeting, my husband and I were shocked to witness the ambushing of Mayor Denner by council members Raylan and Fluid regarding 2 real estate transactions that took place in 08 and 16. The assertion is that the transactions occurred secretly and without council approval. They're not so hidden agendas to try to defame the mayor and council member Robson as current members and members during those periods and as part of a political vendetta. They seek to discredit accomplishments by past councils in an attempt to further their candidates Reed, McConnell, Greer, and Kolar. As park residents for the better part of 100 combined years, we witnessed firsthand the decades-long deterioration and increase in crime along the Detroit side of the border. We are grateful and applaud the measures the city proactively takes up on our behalf to address the blight on Alter or anywhere for that matter to keep us safe, to keep our property values up and the commercial areas vibrant. Lastly, that the council in partnership with residents, donors, and business owners has transformed our retail districts is nothing short of astonishing. This comment comes from Jay Hackelman of Berkshire in Grosse Pointe Park. Following up at the last council meeting, I commend mayor and council for proactively over the past decade more addressing blight on our city border. The biggest financial asset for most of us is our home, and there's nothing like the sound of sirens and gunshots or the sight of blight to dampen for the homeowner or prospective home buyer the unattractiveness of an otherwise quiet bedroom community. Thanks to the council's vision and that of individual park citizens, the nearby area is being stabilized, although we have no zoning control beyond our border. It is comforting to know that council has kept a long-range focus and worked to manage development by acquiring key property. Its work with the Duggan administration to encourage necessary ultra road stabilization and demolition is also commendable. As a result, not only does the city now present a more pleasing Jefferson Gateway, benefiting residents of both the park and its neighbor, more is on the horizon. Council has been supportive of the nearby Huntington Bank branch, proposed SCOP Center for Performing Arts and Manugian Art Gallery, and an affordable and up-to-date facility supporting the park's DPW water board operations. Keep the progress coming. This comment comes from Barbara Detweiler on Edgemont Park in Grosse Pointe Park. Enough is enough. The blindsiding of Mayor Denner and Councilmember Robson at the last city council meeting by freshman council members Raylan and Fluid over real estate matters that took place between 08 and 16 was childish and rude. Stop the endless FOIA requests, the micromanaging of city manager, the expensive use of non-resident consultants, and the constant grandstanding by certain council members to attempt to achieve their objectives. Your role as elected representatives of our community is to address policy issues that represent the citizens' needs and wishes. The new code of conduct states that the city's goals and wishes are achieved through a cooperative working relationship based upon trust between the city council as a body, the city council members as individuals, and the city manager. Let's address the real issues in our city, such as our aging infrastructure, flooding of our homes, the closing of Trombley, and the constant DTE power outages. I implore you to bring civility, trust, and respect for one another and to stop acting like petulant children. They're in need of a timeout. Grosse Pointe Park deserves better. This comment comes from Dan and Connie Blake in Grosse Pointe Park. With so many serious issues facing our city today, sewer backups, lead pipes, poor mail and cell phone service, to name just a few, we were disturbed to hear council members Raylan and Fluid spend precious council time second guessing past real estate transactions at the last meeting. As lifelong residents of the park, we salute the forward-thinking efforts of members like Mayor Denner and Councilmember Robson to rid the border of blight and create a safe, vibrant, and attractive area that benefits residents in both Grosse Pointe Park and Detroit. Their decisions have helped to enhance our property values and continue to draw people and businesses to our wonderful city. Let's continue to move forward, not backwards. This comment comes from Kay Agnew in Grosse Pointe Park. As a resident of Grosse Pointe Park since 1976, I've seen many positive changes over the years. I'm thankful for how proactive past councils and some current council members have been guiding the city forward. I believe decisions regarding the real estate transactions that took place in 08 and 16 were in the best interest of the community. It's a shame that council members Fluid and Raylan have needlessly attacked Mayor Denner and Councilmember Robson just for political purposes. The transformation of our city from 1976 to 2021 is amazing. Look at Kirchville in the park with all the thriving businesses. Income properties on Weyburn, Nottingham, Beaconsfield, Maryland, Lake Point are going up in value. All thanks to donors, residents, and the council. Let's not forget the leadership of Mayor Palmer Heenan. Our community is so fortunate to have their support in keeping Grosse Pointe Park a safe and vibrant community. This comment comes from Leslie and Longine Morowski. To the members of the city council, we have complete faith that Mayor Bob Denner and the city council members during the land transactions which occurred in 08 and 16 acted with the best interests of our community. In addition, business owners, residents, and donors who have supported the revitalization of our retail districts should be applauded for their foresight and generosity. This comment comes from Mr. Greg Donnelly in Grosse Pointe Park. Dear Council, I comment on agenda 8.2 needed to make way for constructing the new DPW building on Mac. It's important that this vote happens before construction on the DPW starts because of a requirement of the city's charter. And I'd like to commend the successful efforts to obtain an easement from Huntington Bank for pedestrian walkway up to Mac. It's important for pedestrians to be able to take this route, though I am a strong proponent of the fact that pedestrians are best served by simply reopening the street. The resolution in front of you today is misleading and should not be approved for the following reasons. There actually is public traffic from Wayburn that uses the alley and old parking lot access Mac. Paths for residents between Mac and their garages will be less convenient due to this development, and the city hasn't offered plans to address this. The resulting dead ends will be dangerous for emergency situations and vehicles. There's going to be greater financial impact than the $2,500 suggested for legal fees for Huntington Bank's easement. The design and construction of the sidewalk will cost far more and impact the site plan for the DPW, but neither of these have been presented. In addition, the bank's approval is suggested to be contingent on vacating Wayburn Y. This comment comes from Sandra Neiman on Kensington and Grosse Pointe Park. What is the point of council members Ame Fluid, Darcy McConnell, Larry Reed, and Vikas Raylan attack on Mayor Denner, Councilman Robson, and previous council members for alleged secret real estate transactions? It has been substantiated by official council minutes that these transactions were legal and not secret at all. They should be explaining their recent public denials of their desire to open or block side streets or other roads leading to Detroit. Emails obtained through Freedom of Information Act indicate these denials are untrue, so why are they denying their secret intentions? Furthermore, why are these council members spending so much time trying to discredit projects that happened beginning in 2008? Their real job is supposed to be representing the tax-paying community and dealing with current relevant issues to enhance Grosse Pointe Park. They need to focus on handling solid infrastructure, reducing sewer overflows, the city deficit, which they have accrued, local community, business interest, and public safety. Grosse Pointe Park deserves a council that is focused on us, the residents, and their families, and the wonderful community we're entitled to have. Mayor Denner, that's all of my written public comments, and now I'm going to go to spoken public comments.
Okay, thank you.
All right, 1 second, please. Okay, the first public comment, I'm going to unmute Mr. Ron Porter. Ron, if you please go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Ron Porter. I live on Pemberton Road. I lived in the park since 1984, always south of Jefferson. Loved the neighborhood. When I moved in, there was a vibrant commercial district on Jefferson. As everyone knows, there is no longer a vibrant commercial district on Jefferson. But my real purpose is to congratulate Councilmember Rellin and Councilmember Fluid for bringing up these land transactions. The voters of Grosse Pointe Park are entitled to know how their money was used. And since some of the current candidates for council and mayor are running on the record of the past administrations, we are entitled to know in detail exactly how that past administration purported to serve our interests. In the case of the Pitters land transaction, it appears they spent $400,000 of the city's sewer maintenance fund to acquire a business on Alta Road that was very popular with park residents. And so what they've actually done by acquiring that business is put it out of business. So rather than getting rid of blight, they've contributed to blight. And they spent $100,000 to purportedly store materials on the property, but they never, or I don't believe that they ever put any materials on that property. So they basically wasted $400,000 of the city money, which could have been used to maintain our sewer system or our water system, and accomplished none of the goals. It didn't stop any blight. It didn't improve the Alta neighborhood at all. And it didn't accomplish any city goals. It only benefited Phil Pitters, who sold property that probably was not worth anywhere near $400,000. And he reached a huge gain. I also want to kind of chastise Mayor Denner for his response to the questions at the last meeting. I mean, what a cowardly response to just say, well, before I try to remember, we're going to have to dig up the records. And then magically 2 days later, ex-Mayor Theokas has everything all laid out for everybody, supposedly, or at least his version. So, you know, it's really the voters of Grosse Pointe Park deserve better from you, Mayor Denner, than what you gave them at the last meeting. So that's my comment. I urge the council to keep digging and unravel these transactions that were at best extremely unwise.
Next public comment is Eric. Eric, if you could please state your name and city of residence, and please go ahead.
Oh, I guess I don't get to show my video. Okay, my name is Eric Dewicki. For the past 31 years, I've lived on 3 Mile Drive, about 2 football fields north of Mac on the Detroit side of Mac. Recently, I was elected the president of the Morningside Community Organization. And Morningside neighborhood, for those of you who don't know, goes from Alter to Whittier and from Mac north to 94. So I'm here this evening to ask this council to perhaps take another look at item 8.2 regarding the closing of Wayburn for the new DPW facility. I think as Council Member Hodges and some other folks here know that I recently retired as an instructor from the University of Michigan in Urban and Regional Planning. And I've been a longtime advocate of walkable and bikeable neighborhoods. Closing off Wayburn to both vehicle traffic, but especially to not have a sidewalk, from what I can see, that's accessible from Mac, is really kind of a snubbing, if you will, of the Detroit residents who might like to access some of the businesses along Charlevoix and Kercheval, including me. I also am the board chair of Youth Snapback, and we are about to put over $1 million into redoing 64 townhouses along Alter Road, the east side of Alter Road and Wayburn. Again, those residents deserve to be able to not be shut off, just like in many other areas of the park. Let's not have more walls. Let's have less walls between our communities. And I would encourage you to send that site plan back to the architects for reconsideration so that both Grosse Pointers, I mean, it's really going to increase traffic on Maryland if you shut down that street. So as an urban planner, as a Detroiter, I want to really encourage you to take another look at the way that thing is laid out and to really not vote to approve it tonight, but to have it sent back to the drawing board for further consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Next public comment is Nicole. Nicole, if you could please unmute yourself and please state your name, city residence. And please
Hi.
go ahead, Nicole.
Hi, my name is Nicole Hodges. I'm a resident of Grosse Pointe Park, and I have a letter I've prepared. Dear City of Grosse Pointe Park and City Council members, I write to you after mulling over all of the Zoom City Council meetings during the pandemic, especially the most recent meeting last month. Unfortunately, my Zoom connection was cut a little short during the meeting due to another power outage on my street. I missed the attack on our mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and more. When I finished listening online, I honestly felt embarrassed for Reeland and Fluid. They appear to focus on angrily attacking with false, misleading facts to stir up a non-issue from many, many years ago, while many residents like me in this area are still dealing with actual, true problems. Low voltage areas, frequent power outages, and damage, costly reconstruction from repeated flooding events. It is baffling how utterly uncaring the majority of our city council appears to be regarding real-time issues that are significant and currently ongoing. I get a real sense after listening to every single city council meeting for months that Reed, Fluid, Reland, and McConnell would rather make small issues into major issues, stoke strife, encourage discontent, complain, and attack anyone available, rather than do the work required to smoothly and cohesively run a small city. Results matter, truth matters, honesty matters, basic city services matter, public safety matters. Resolving the repeated flooding and keeping power running in this city is paramount. I look forward to the upcoming nonpartisan election and truly pray that my fellow residents will vote for candidates who want to do what is best for our wonderful community, not tear it down, not discourage our public safety officers, bully anyone that disagrees with them, and call us all racist if we do not capitulate to their twisted negative view of the world. Let's return to a professional city council that works together for the good of all and will work to support our fine administration team, public safety, and small businesses. I have never regretted buying and renovating our home in Grosse Pointe Park 15 years ago. We continue to invest in our property and in our community. I am so thankful to live here, and thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Next comment is the screen name Dodlin. If you could please unmute yourself and state your name and city residence, and please go ahead.
Mary O'Donnell, Grosse Pointe Park. I live on 3 Mile Drive. It says Dodlin because that's my husband's last name. The two of us have cumulatively lived in Grosse Pointe Park over 100 years. At the last council meeting, which was lengthy, council members Roland and Fluid ambushed Mayor Denner by implying that real estate transactions in the distant past were somehow inappropriate, e.g. in violation of the Open Meetings Act or otherwise inappropriate. For myriad reasons, this attack was disturbing to the point of being sickening. First, you, members Roland and Fluid, are members of the council with Mayor Denner. Ask him in a non-public forum about these transactions, if you're really interested in understanding them. Do not ambush him, and do not take the time of the public with your failure to conduct your due diligence. If you have a question, do your homework. Second, had you done your homework, you would have learned, which is in fact the point of doing homework, learning the history of those transactions, that they were appropriate, fully in compliance with governing laws and protocols, and were successful for both Grosse Pointe Park and Detroit. Third, your ambush revealed not only your failure to do your homework, but it also revealed what appears to be, sadly, your governing philosophy of negative, uneducated attacks, perhaps in the interest of headline-grabbing attention. Fourth, these types of polarizing attacks detract from the important issues of our community, such as the storm, sewer, water issues, and the ever-growing deficit. Fifth, these attacks attempted unsuccessfully to detract from the accomplishments of those who came before you, those who worked tirelessly and intelligently across city lines for the benefit of both the Grosse Pointe Park community and the Detroit community. Your craven efforts reflect negatively on you, not on those who came before you, who served this fine community and who deserve your respect and gratitude. Please, council members, let us work together for the betterment of our community, the community you moved into because you saw positive things. Let's be positive instead of negative. In gratitude for all those who came before us and who have maintained and improved this community, I am sincerely Mary O'Donnell. Thank you.
Thank you. Next public comment comes from Mr. William Broman. William, if you could please state your name and city of residence, and please go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Will Broman. I am officially a resident of Grosse Pointe Park, and for the last 2 years have been a non-resident student. I have been investigating the placement of some stop signs, and as members of the council know, I sent a fairly lengthy letter with many attachments outlining some research on the dangers of unwarranted stop signs and the risk of civil liability that the city might face. In addition to the potential loss of state and federal aid funds when stop signs are placed without proper justification. I see that agenda item number 6 is the Public Safety Director's report. And during that report, if it is so relevant, I would ask that you inquire about when the last engineering study was done to determine whether a stop sign was warranted. I would ask that you inquire as to why a stop sign was placed at St. Paul and Somerset when there has been no accident, or there's been one accident at St. Paul and Somerset in the last 10 years, which would not have been solved by a stop sign. I would ask you to inquire of the Department of Public Safety why they think that this particular unwarranted stop sign is going to beat the statistics when it comes to rear end collisions and pedestrian injuries. And I would ask you to then further ask the Director of Public Safety why or how additional engineering studies can be done throughout the city to ensure that we are in compliance with state and federal law. And lastly, I would ask that if the Director of Public Safety or the Deputy Director maintains that those stop signs are okay, I ask that you inquire how the Department of Public Safety is going to fund the Safe Routes to Schools program if the federal government ultimately determines that the city is not abiding by the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices and prevents the city from accepting aid money for both Defer and for Pierce. This is an oversight body, as I believe all of the municipal governments in Grosse Pointe are. And so I would ask that when we get to agenda item 6, that you perform your oversight role and ask why the department apparently isn't following the law. More to that point, the federal law on the height of stop signs is 7 feet in residential areas. And just this past week, the stop sign at St. Paul and Somerset was reduced to 5 feet. So we are further out of compliance. And I may have additional comments later during non-agenda action item time.
Thank you. Mayor Denner, that's the last of spoken public comments.
Thank you, City Manager Seisman. Okay, we will now move on to the next topic, which is the Manager and Public Safety Report. And I'll turn that over to the administration to give us your reports. Thank you. Nick?
Yep, I lost my screen for a second. I'm on the 5th page for some reason.
Okay.
I don't know why. So thank you, Mayor Denner, and members of City Council and the residents. We changed up the process a little bit tonight. So first, I'm going to go through my manager's report, and then we'll also have our Deputy Director, Jim Bostek, provide a report from the Department of Public Safety, and then we'll answer your questions thereafter. Just a few updates. Wayne County American Rescue Plan funding. The county received so many dollars from the county. The city sent an several applications for Wayne County. We're expected to have an award announced sometime soon, so we're awaiting that. Social District, for those of you who don't know, I'd like to welcome Howlers and Growlers over on Charlevoix as a new social district business. So please, have a beer, have a burger as well. Non-TIFA DDA business grants. This was something discussed at our prior council meeting regarding the city's American Rescue Plan dollars of $50,000 that would go to businesses that are specifically on areas of Mack Avenue, Fairfax, and those that are just outside of the TIFA district. And right now we're in development of a grant process similar to what was done with the Downtown Development Authority, and that will be administered by the city. The dog park opened recently with great success. Parks and Rec has had over 100 fobs purchased in the short time and expect much more next year. Licenses for this year are only $15 due to the abbreviated season, and then we'll expect that to be increased next year. The movie theaters, the Scop and Okulski theaters reopen on Friday and will resume operations on the weekends with no weekday showings at this time. We'll see how attendance is before returning to weekday showings in with COVID. The city master plan. So any day now, Administration and Planning Commission will receive the first draft of the master plan. Afterwards, Planning Commission will have a meeting for review and comment. And then afterwards, if approved by the Planning Commission, it will then be forwarded on to City Council for their consideration and approval. Road paving, Cadillac just finished up this weekend on Sunday, I believe, Nottingham Road. So that completes Nottingham, Somerset, Park Lane, St. Paul, and Fairfax for all those. The Small Business Administration and FEMA, for those that were missed the filing deadline of September 13th. The filing deadline has been extended now for physical property damage to October 13th, 2021 from the June storm events. As well with DTE, DTE is working with the city on a final punch list for sidewalk maintenance repair. Discussion with DTE regarding soft restoration need for round 2. We will do so. I would highly encourage residents and members of council, if you know of any sidewalks that still have not been addressed or need to be done, if you could please forward those on to the Department of Public Works. They will then add that to their list to send to DTE. So if you could do that, that would be really helpful for the city. Planning Commission, the city administration is coordinating with the developer at the foot of Wayburn near the proposed DPW for an on-site visit of their proposed development layout. This was presented to the Planning Commission several months ago and was tabled for a later time. So that'll be in the works too at Planning Commission. The Public Works Building, steel is expected to arrive in January and soft construction will commence soon. And Huntington Bank approved of the sidewalk agreement presented at our last council meeting. The City Hall building, if you'll notice, the roof has been done. That is almost complete at this time. As well, windows are being worked on right now at the city offices. And we received bids back for a phase 2 of the project. However, due to the high numbers at this time, we're going to look to rebid those numbers about in January at some time. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over now to the Deputy Director of Public Safety, Jim Bostek. And then afterwards, we'll be happy to answer any of council's questions.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Seisland. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. To start the public safety report, I'd first like to briefly touch on what's coming up later on in the agenda, and that's the public safety fitness room donation. The Park Foundation has offered to donate funds to completely revamp our current fitness room. The entire public safety department, we're humbled by the generosity. It continues just to reinforce what we already know, and that's that we have great, outstanding support throughout Grosse Pointe Park. As you know, public safety is a profession that requires its members to be physically fit in both body and mind. Public safety involves anything from running, physically engaging in suspects, fighting fires, carrying people downstairs on stretchers. So we want our officers to have professional grade workout facility for functional fitness. And with the acceptance of this donation, we'll be able to provide our officers with new state-of-the-art fitness room. A little history on our current public safety fitness room. All the equipment has been pieced together over the last 25, 30 years at the expense of individual officers who just pooled together their money and put stuff together so they had a place to work out. Over the years, the equipment has gotten, let's just say, tired. One of the things I first did when Chief Gerald came on board was I drove him around the city and then I gave him a tour of the department. When I took him to the fitness room, I can remember the look on his face, and he turned to me and he asked me, "Do people really use this?" And I said, "Yes, we do, because this is what we have, and this is the guys are okay with that." So just over the years, several studies have been done showing the stress of police and fire work and the effects that it has on the body and the overall life expectancy of public safety officers. Some studies have the life expectancy as much as 20 years less than general population. for a variety of reasons, stress both mentally and physically, shift work, your sleep patterns are disrupted. So overall, I say the upgrading of our fitness area is going to keep your officers strong, will hopefully reduce the possibility of injuries while on the job, and continue, and we want to use it as a future recruiting tool to hire quality candidates in the future, showing them that we are committed to their wellness. Secondly, our first police advisory committee, we will meet on Thursday, September 30th at 6 p.m. here at Grosse Pointe Park Court. The purpose of the advisory board is to serve as a two-way exchange of information between the community and the police department. We want to generate unity, continue and promote and familiarize residents and businesses of Grosse Pointe Park with our public safety programs and services. We want to create a climate of trust between the community and the Department of Public Safety. And it's also going to serve as a forum to identify any problems or issues from the community that we may not know about. And lastly, the Faith in Blue open house will be held at Patterson Park on October 9th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Everybody's invited. Come and meet members of your public safety department. We'll have the fire trucks, police cars. We'll have demonstrations on fire safety from the Grosse Pointe Fire Prevention Unit. And you can learn more about events going on throughout the country at faithinblue.org. And lastly, what I would like to do now is I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce the council and the administration and the residents of Grosse Pointe Park, our newest public safety officer, Corey Farmer. I first met Corey back in March of this year, is just a few days after we extended an offer of employment to Tim Evans. I can tell you that I was very impressed with Corey, and even though we didn't have any openings, I kept that application on my desk. In mid-August, we had an unexpected resignation, so I reached out to Corey to see if Corey was still interested in becoming a public safety officer here in Grosse Pointe Park. Without hesitation, Corey said yes. Corey comes from the east side, has local ties. Corey earned an associate degree from Macomb Community College and is currently a firefighter and EMT for the city of Brighton. Corey will begin working with public safety on October 13th and be assigned to the shift until the next police academy begins in January of next year. So it's my pleasure to introduce to you, council and members of Grosse Pointe Park and the residents of Grosse Pointe Park, the newest member of our team, Corey Farmer. And I believe she's here. Hi, Corey.
Hey, how are you guys? So
Welcome.
glad to be a part of the meeting. Thank you for having me.
Welcome aboard. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be a part of the community, and I'm excited to learn from the ground up and really get involved in the community of Grosse Pointe Park.
Great, thank you. Look forward to it.
And that will conclude my public safety report.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Director. At this time, does council have any questions for the city manager or for Deputy Director Bostek? Councilmember McConnell.
Good evening. Thanks, City Manager Seisland, Deputy Chief Bostek. I wanted to say that I'm excited about the new fitness facility. When I met the chief, he showed it to me as well, and it was pretty ghastly. And in conversations with officers, they seem pretty excited about it as well. So I think it's great. It'll be a great asset for our team. And then this is a City Manager Seisland. On the committee, I assume the committee members, advisory committee members, are going to be made public to the public at some point.
I do. Jim, can you answer that question? I know Chief Gerald has the list already. I'm not sure if that's something he's discussed. Yeah, I know he hasn't discussed with me yet.
Councilmember McConnell, can you repeat that?
Sure. I was just asking if the advisory committee members' names will be made public.
That will be up to Chief Gerald. I don't see a problem with it.
Okay. All right, and then this may not be for now, maybe later, but like just been hearing from residents who have sinkholes that are arising. So I don't know if that's something for Pat to address or you, City Manager Seisland, but I'm just if you all are addressing that, and two, what should we be telling residents as it relates to remedies?
Okay, so I'll answer a little bit to that, and Pat Thomas is actually available here too, so I'll ask him to speak on behalf of typically what the DPW sees. So in regards to sinkholes, oftentimes, for example, let's say in the alley, you might see some sinkholes that are developing in that area. More often than not, in most cases, that's probably, the residents' sewer lateral line that's going to the main. There could be a leak there or a crack that could be leading to that area, or just in your backyard of your residential home. We have seen an uptick of these in regards to the last couple storm events. And it's something that we typically, if you have not done so or do on a yearly basis, to please hire a local plumber. Typically it's about, I think, $125. And what they'll do is they'll camera and sewer your line where they'll clean out roots and such. And so, Pat, did I cover it, or go ahead and answer if there's anything else?
Yeah, you covered it pretty much, City Manager Seisland, on that. Yeah, we've been working through the alleys. Guys have been patching areas that are actually sinking a little bit. Other areas where there's openings and everything. I've been getting a list together to send to residents so they are aware that they may have a problem with their lateral line. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Reed.
Thank you, Mayor Denner. I'd also like to welcome Officer Farmer and look forward to seeing her out on the streets and interacting with the community. And also congratulations on the new fitness center, and thank you to the foundation. I know that will be well used and much appreciated. A couple of questions for the city manager on the DTE soft restoration. Is that referring to a second round for some of the grass restoration?
That is correct, Councilmember Reed.
And will that be in the spring or yet this fall?
Some possibly this fall, but more likely in the spring, especially in regards to seeding.
Okay, great. And then you mentioned the site plan visit by the Planning Commission at the Weyburn site, the Weyburn development site. I assume that will be posted as a public meeting, so interested residents can attend that as well.
From my understanding and talking with the city attorney, because this is kind of a working or a workshop in a way, that this would be something just for the Planning Commission. The developer actually asked of the Planning Commission if they could view the site. However, that's my recollection of talking with Jake about that. And so if there's anything different, obviously, I'll check with the city attorney again if that needs to be posted.
Okay, but those site plans will at some point be discussed publicly for the residents' benefit.
Yeah, so at a future planning commission, Councilmember Reed, yeah, the site plan will be there, similar to in the previous meeting. And so it's just kind of a invite from the developer for the planning commission review. They did have there was some discussion regarding parking in the rear of that development. And so that developer would like to formally show the commission.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Fluid, you had your hand up.
I did, thanks. I just have two questions. The first for the city manager, again, regarding the DTE restoration. Is there a deadline for residents to reach out and make you aware of areas that need further work?
My best answer would be as soon as possible. I don't have a deadline right now, Councilmember Fluid. I know we're going to be coordinating with our DPW department of a walkthrough actually with DTE. So our DPW will be walking with DTE. So I would highly encourage, anyone, and we'll put out city notice as well to please be aware of those such.
That was my question was, is that going to go out to the city email list and on Facebook and all those channels to make sure that everybody is aware of it?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thanks. And then my other question was for Lieutenant Bostek, sorry, Deputy Chief Bostek. thank you for introducing the new officer to us. And I just wanted to ask you if she is our first female sworn officer in the department.
No, she is not. She will be the fourth in the history of Grosse Pointe Park. She'll be the fourth female.
Okay. Well, either way, I'm sure everyone will welcome her. You know, I'm a big proponent of our department looking like the community that we serve, and I'm very excited. I'm sure she'll be an asset. So thank you for introducing her tonight.
Pleasure.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else before we move on? Mayor Pro Tem Robson.
Thank you, Mayor Denner. Question for City Manager Seisman. You gave us an update on the road paving. Are there other streets in the queue that will be done this year?
So what we're looking at right now, Councilmember Robson, as well, is potentially some alleys. But however, what we need to do too is look at those alleys that have been separated. Those would be ones that we could go ahead and pave. However, due to the season right now, we have a pretty short window left. So this could be something that could happen, or more likely is going to happen next year. But as in regards to city streets itself, no, not at this time.
But there are some that need to be paved, correct?
That is correct. Yes, there are still some streets that need to be paved as part of the road millages.
And I think one of them is the 1100 block of Beaconsfield, if memory serves me correct.
Yep, and as soon as this is done, OHM advisors or city engineer will be updating their PASER rating map. And I'll tell you right now, the map is looking a lot better. I'm seeing a lot more greens than I am reds. So that's a good thing.
Sure. And one last question. I was out of town over the weekend, but can you give us an update on the new bookstore on Kercheval? Is that about to open?
Yes, so there's a new bookstore on Kercheval. It's called Coriander's Children's Bookstore. It's 2 levels, and they also have 2 condos that I believe are in there with a garden for those tenants that'll be living there. It'll be for children's books and young adults, as well as there's going to be a little, like we'll call it, coffee shop area for desserts, snacks, ice cream, so you can get all the kids hyped up while they're reading books. And then there's actually a little story time area in there where they have a little stage and such. And so I believe they're actually opening tomorrow, if I'm correct. So that's something we're looking forward to.
Well, that's great.
Community.
Great news and a great amenity, another great amenity for Kercheval Avenue. Thank you very much.
Okay, I think that's it, and we can move on to committee and commission reports. I have a few listed here. The first one I have is the Recreation Commission, and Councilmember Reed is our representative there, and I'll ask Councilmember Reed to report out.
Thank you, Mayor Denner. The commission met on September 1st via Zoom. Updates for Windmill Park. The pool closed for the season on Labor Day with a 1 weekend extension for Camp Windmill. Off-season repairs for the pool and upgrades include replacement of the pool boiler. Camp Windmill took place on the weekend of September 10th to 12th. We had 90 campsites, we had inflatables, an outdoor movie, plus some bonus pool time. The weather was great and it was a nice way to close out the summer. Upcoming events include Halloween in the Park, which will be on October 23rd with timed entry tickets at 3:30, 4, and 4:30. I believe tickets go on sale this Friday. Let's see, movies, as the city manager mentioned, are back at the Lavin Center, so please check the website for movie listings and sign up for email notices. Fall programming at the Lavin Center includes Rocksteady boxing, karate, cornhole, and pickleball. The marina will be upgrading internet speed. The Marina Subcommittee will also be meeting to review the engineering study at its next meeting, which will likely be in October. That meeting has not yet been set. As the city manager mentioned, the dog park is open now at Patterson Park. Director Craig also confirmed that the Skyhawks youth sports programming is underway with over 12 children in each program, all of whom are verified park residents. Also at Patterson, the parking lot resurfacing has been completed. For gardening, fall decorating is underway, if not complete. You'll notice the lamp posts in the commercial districts and the decorations at the park. Charlevoix Street Party took place on September 18th and was a success. And the next meeting of the Recreation Commission will be on November 3rd at 7 p.m.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to Beautification Commission. Councilmember Rowland, who is obviously excused this evening, is normally our representative to that, but Councilmember Reed has volunteered to collect the information from the chair of the commission and report out. So Councilmember Reed, you're still up.
Thank you. Yes, I've been in communication with Kim Kleckson, and as a past council member for beautification, I'm happy to step in. The commission met on September 15th. Their main event is coming up for the fall, and that's the Fall Plant Exchange, which is this Saturday, October 2nd, from 9:30 to 11:30 a.m. at the Tompkins Center. The commission is hoping to hold the event outside, weather permitting, and it looks like the weather will cooperate. I don't believe details are yet posted on the website, but it's a traditional plant exchange. You bring your plants, you divide your plants, you bring them to give away, and you can collect from others. And they usually have an orphan table for people who don't have plants to give, but are interested in new plantings. The commission next will meet on October 6th. That should be via Zoom. And their annual beautification awards is for the following week. I think there's a discrepancy whether it's the 13th or 14th, and it will be a virtual format again this year. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
If I could add to that, I was at that meeting as a regular citizen, if you will, an observer, but that was a great report. But a couple other things that they brought up was our city forester has completed residential street trimming in the northwest sector. And they're going to schedule other neighborhoods beyond that. And they're also talking about doing an alley cleanup award. They're going to look into that. This is to address some of our alleys that are not looking good. So they're going to use as an incentive a good looking alley area or what have you. So they're also working on that.
Okay, thank you. And then the Michigan Municipal League had their annual conference recently, and I don't know if Councilmember Fluid has a report. She is our representative to MML. You do have a report. I see you now.
I do. I have a lengthy report.
Uh-oh. Okay, the floor is yours.
It's all on one page, so it's not too bad. But yeah, I was happy to attend the conference last week in Grand Rapids. I was there for about a day and a half of the conference. The city manager was there as well. And so I just have a lot of kind of bullet points that I wanted to share. And what I will probably do is type them up in email to everybody as well, in case you guys would like to have them. But the keynote speaker was the city manager of Grand Rapids, and he was talking in the opening event a little bit about several things. But there was one quote that he said that I thought was really nice. He was talking about Grand Rapids, obviously a much bigger city with a bigger budget than we have, but he was talking about their equity initiatives. And he said, they had population growth. And he said, how much more would we have grown if people felt more welcome? And I thought that was a great quote, that they're making those efforts. They talked about the American Rescue Plan, different ways to spend those funds. Obviously, we've already talked about that. And I think we're all in agreement about using those funds here for water infrastructure. But the National League of Cities has an online tool that the city manager is very excited about, that I know he got that information that can kind of help walk him through additional grants and the best ways to utilize those funds. I went to a session that was about master plans, and took down some of those good quotes that I wanted to share. One was that the word plan is a verb and that it should always be changing. We don't have to review the master plan, or that our requirement is that we review it every 5 years, but they were saying, don't do it every 5 years and then put it on a shelf. We should always be thinking about, working with and developing our master plan. that it should be a cohesive community vision, and we should look at our city through the eyes of many different types of people. And they didn't just mean diversity, they meant people who live here, people who visit here, people who come here to shop, people who rent here, all different kinds of people that might visit or live in the city. It's considered a statement of community values, and we can't make one without listening to the community. They suggested ongoing meetings, and even suggested that council could have meetings with the planning commission, join together occasionally in one big meeting to discuss some of these planning. I don't want to say issues, that's kind of a negative word, but ongoing planning that we might want to do. We could even include our surrounding communities. We could give those master planning goals, updates to those goals include those in our budget documents so that we tie the budget to the master plan and see how we're doing. And then, sustainability, they did touch on sustainability. This was great. That sustainability can be, included in the master plan. And two things that they mentioned were assessing our public spaces for stormwater issues, and then doing a comprehensive review of where we could add greenery to our public spaces to contain water runoff. And I'm going to see if we can have a sustainability meeting in October to start talking about that, because it wouldn't necessarily be expensive, but again, it would be something we could do right now for stormwater mitigation. But I like the idea of including some of those things in the master plan. The Michigan Economic Development Commission has $100 million in grants available right now for placemaking. And placemaking is developing our public spaces in a way that is specific to our community. So they were urging people to apply for those grants. And then they also talked about redevelopment ready community certification, which I wanted to touch on. Because like so many other things, there's a lot of misinformation about what being redevelopment ready certified entails. It's a technical assistance program for communities to get the state's help with vision, economic development, and marketing select sites in our cities. So 296 communities in Michigan are in the process right now. 59 have completed this process. I know this is something the city manager is working on. We've been talking about it for a while. I think it's a worthwhile endeavor. It's focused on small towns. And one of the great things that they do is they will match $3 to every dollar that we spend on projects. So essentially, if we have a project that they approve, something, it could be like website development. The MEDC would pay 75% of that project. Now, obviously that's not for everything, but that's could be one of the benefits of getting that redevelopment ready certification. And then just a few more random things. The closing session was kind of like just a panel of MML representatives, and they kind of talked about a lot of random issues, but it was one of the most useful sessions of the event, I think, because MML is such a valuable resource and provides us with so much good information. And this, I think, is where we talk about local government is more than just making sure the trash gets picked up and the roads are paved, because MML really keeps an eye on legislative issues and what's going on in Lansing for us. They kind of do the hard work for us and keep us apprised so that we can speak up when we need to. They were suggesting that we push our representatives, our state representatives, for more revenue sharing. So, I know local budgets have not benefited from revenue sharing, but they were hoping for an increase of about 2% this year, which I think works out to about $25,000 for us. It's not a lot, but they were saying keep pushing back on that. Talk to our local representatives and see if we can encourage them to do better. They discussed the short-term rental issue, and this is something that Councilmember Reed has been on top of for a long time. I know, we passed the resolution. As a council, we unanimously voted on that resolution to take a stand on this, and it was not so much about not having short-term rentals in our city as much as it was about our city being able to make that decision for itself rather than the state telling us what we had to do. And MML was saying that they call this a preemption bill, and they said there are currently 39 preemption bills in our state Senate that only have to do with voting in our state. So I'm very thankful that we have MML to keep an eye on these type of bills. Like I said, they kind of spoon feed this information to us. We get almost daily emails from them so that we know when we need to speak up and push back on these kind of things. I'm almost done. Let me just take a quick look at my notes here. Oh, they recommended a cybersecurity assessment for all municipalities, and city manager, I don't know if we've ever done something like that.
That's something that annually IT Right does do with us, which is our city IT provider.
Okay. I reached out to someone locally who works for a cybersecurity company. If you want to get more information about that from another vendor who's not our provider, we can, I can certainly, it's not my field, but I can put you in touch with somebody if you want to do that. One thing that they recommended was changing our domain name to a .gov. And they said that would allow us some extra protection and oversight from the cyber, what's it stand for? CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, the federal agency that oversees those things. I had never heard of that. I'm asking somebody to check on that and get back to me and let me know if that's actually correct or not. So I will let you know if I get more information about that. And then finally, MML is hopeful that there will be a little bit more federal infrastructure funding coming through the pipeline. And they also believe that virtual meetings are most likely not going to be approved past the current expiration date, which is in December. And I think that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, my experience with the MML has always been very positive. They are, as you pointed out, a terrific resource for cities, especially smaller cities like us. And they also, as you pointed out, effectively are lobbyists when it comes to state legislation, which is really important because they try to represent cities from across the state. So to summarize some of the things that you pointed out, those are two very important roles that I think MML provides for us, as well as some others. With that said, I'm not sure, sometimes there's been an Eastside Community Network meeting to be reported on, and I'm not sure if there has been or not. Councilmember Hodges.
Thank you, Mayor Denner. I can provide a brief update. The good news is, thanks to the leadership of Representative Joe Tate, there is a $200,000 allocation from stimulus money that will be dedicated to phase 1 of implementing the Mack Avenue Streetscape Plan. The ECN also had its homecoming week last weekend. I hope some of our Grosse Pointe Parkers had an opportunity to attend that and be part of the community and linking us together. There's also a marketing and branding study underway along Mack Avenue. There are some beautification priorities that have been identified, including tree planting, sculptures, much like you see on the Moross Greenway, and holiday street banners. I would also like to alert everyone listening today that Jefferson Chalmers does regularly convene master planning sessions that provide great updates for all of us to be aware of as well. There was a report that DTE is partnering with MISTA on various forms of assistance. I believe that's already been circulating on social media. There's a Taco Bell that is seeking a rezoning to locate in Detroit. And there are other further zoning considerations and strategies that are being contemplated. And then lastly, the county has completed a retail study along the corridor that a report will be pending shortly. So all good things happening along the corridor, and I will continue to keep you all informed. If anybody has any questions, please reach out at any time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I believe that ends our commission and committee reports. I don't think I missed any. I don't see anyone raising their hands, so I think that's correct. With that, let's move on to unfinished business, which is our next topic area. And we'll start with the Pitters and Altar properties, which, as it turns out, we've heard a fair amount about from the public already. I do have some introductory comments on this topic, and then I'm going to ask the administration to comment and then open it up for a council discussion. This topic has been included in the agenda as a result of comments made by council members Rellin and Fluid during new business council comment on at the August 23rd council meeting. Deals with real estate transactions approved and completed in years starting in 2008. First, I was disappointed that these items were raised as part of council comment with no prior discussion with the administration or with me. The proper way for a member of council to understand previous city business would be to contact the administration so that the appropriate research of past records can be completed, and then if desired, a request to add the item to the council agenda as we're doing tonight. We should also be sensitive to the fact that this takes considerable administrative time away from other city priorities such as infrastructure and other things the city is trying to focus on. The manner in which this topic was raised in August implies a purpose beyond understanding previous transactions and possibly influenced by election politics. Election politics have no place in city council meetings, and any appearance of such should be avoided by all members of council so we can all focus as colleagues, administration and elected officials, on city business. Now I'm going to summarize briefly my understanding of the real estate transactions and then ask the administration to comment, fill in appropriate details. First, I want to comment on the Alter Road residential properties. By 2008, a recession had gripped the country and the real estate market, resulting in plunging property values and abandoned and blighted properties in Grosse Pointe Park as well as Detroit. The Northwest sector was particularly stressed. There was a sense of council in a broad segment of our community that city government should be proactive in eliminating blight, and in particular, supporting the Northwest sector. As a result, the city acquired a number of distressed properties within our city and on our border in Detroit with the objective of redevelopment or at the least green space to replace blight. An agreement was also reached in 2014 between Detroit and Grosse Pointe Park to work together to eliminate blight and support redevelopment. This agreement resulted in the city of Detroit demolishing numerous vacant blighted properties on Alter Road. Early in this effort, specific property purchases, such as the ones in 2008 that were referenced last month, were included in the finance report for approval by council. This was the case for those properties that were discussed or identified last month, which were approved on a December 2008 finance report. As activity and urgency increased, the council created the Real Estate Development Committee to work with the city manager on real estate transactions. An example of this is the Real Estate Committee on October 16, 2012, directed the acquisition of 2 Alter Road properties not to exceed $5,000. The $5,000 is important because this is consistent with the authority of the city manager for financial matters. The property owned and operated by Phil Pitter's company on Alter Road had been discussed by the administration and members of council for many years. It came to our attention that the company may want to sell these properties, and the city was interested in both avoiding a detrimental use on our border and in possibly using the property to support our DPW operations. In 2016, Mr. Pitters indicated to the administration that the company would actively market the properties. Rumors included a possible used car lot. As Grosse Pointe Park was continuing to look for opportunities to support DPW operations, council, after closed-door discussions, directed the city manager to pursue the purchase, which was ultimately closed in late 2017. The Associated Landscape Services Agreement, in part, incented Phil Pitter's company to continue seasonal retail operations on the property to ensure continued beneficial use as the city considered longer-term plans for the property after completion of the land contract. This property has been utilized by the city in recent years to store bulk materials in support of the water department, and also as a staging space for DTE and InfoSource to facilitate their efforts in the city related to the gas main project. I do believe that all these transactions were completed consistent with city policies and helped move Grosse Pointe Park forward. Also, I did disband the Real Estate Development Committee as I concluded it was no longer needed. Since becoming city manager, I'd like to point out that Nick Seisland has implemented numerous improvements in city processes to adopt current best practices, and I'm confident that going forward, the processes related to real estate will continue to be enhanced as appropriate. With that, I'll turn it over to the administration for any comments on some of the details. If they choose, there were a number of documents in the council package that were posted online, which support in more detail some of my comments. So with that, City Manager Seisland.
Thank you, Mayor Denner, members of council. So members of council and the public, before you tonight is records and documents that my team here in the city administration obtained in regards to a discussion topic regarding Alter Road properties and of the Phil Pitters lot over on Alter Road. Just wanted to point out that in research of the two 1200 block properties on Alter Road, I also found that the city of Grosse Pointe Park also owned the two 1500 properties, which are 1588 and 1596 Alter. So I just wanted to let the public know as well that these were two other areas that we owned, and just wanted to be proactive in letting you know upon research. And so my humble suggestion in regards to those Alter properties is that the city council consider moving forward with those 4 properties. That this was done by prior administration and council, and it was approved by such. However, moving forward, I think for the city, I think it would be in the best interest for us to consider whether or not we want to put these properties up with a fair market value analysis, seeing what those properties would obtain on the open market, as well go up for an appraisal in consideration of selling those properties. I do believe, as prior members of city council and the city council members that were here as part of that they accomplished their goal at the time to seek blight removal over in those areas. So I believe, that's something I would like for the council to consider in regards to those Alter Road properties. As well, what I did provide for in your packet is a public document that I sent to city council in regards to the questions and details regarding these purchases. I wanted to be made aware to the public. A couple of those details I'll share that the mayor did not say in his comment, and some of them I may be redundant, so my apologies for such. But the final payment under the land contract include about $28,000 in December for the completion of the land contract for the Phil Pitters property, at which point the deed and full title will be in the city's name. And there is one more $6,700 payment left under the landscape services agreement due on January 1. And this contract obligates the city to pay the rest of the amount if we were to terminate this. And as well, question, what I wanted to look into is working with our auditor to make sure that these agreements were in compliance with auditing standards. He had reviewed these in the past. The gentleman's name is Ramey Phillips. And so he did review these purchases in subsequent years, and they were booked in the proper areas that he had deemed well. And just for information purposes too, on the Pitters property over on Alter Road, we have stored some landscape material there as well as DT and InfraSource. DPW has stored sand and pea gravel as used for water main breaks at the site. Non-related, but just as additional information, Phil Pitters had agreed there's a site on Algonquin in Detroit that has been used for storage of large snow plows, which is unrelated to these agreements. A question that was asked is, why is the $107,000 being charged to the water sewer fund? The reason some of these payments are being charged to the water sewer fund was because the majority of being water sewer related for water main breaks, the sand, pea gravel, and rocks and such. And the $285,000 was charged to the capital improvement fund because this was a capital purchase. The land contract is charged to the fund as this was seen as a potential for DPW and to improve the lot for their use and due to the lack of storage to house material for the water board. And so, as the mayor also indicated, as we move forward, I'd like to remind everyone on council and the public tonight that at the time back when council was not provided all documentation that you see in your monthly packets now to make the best informed decision. Our approach now, I believe, is really important for the community and for council in obtaining trust from the residents and fellow members of council. That creates accountability across the board for the city manager, myself, and staff and city council. And working together, I believe we can continue our progress and build that trust for our residents that seek that of city government, which is the basis of why we do this and why we're here to serve our residents of Grosse Pointe Park. My humble suggestion to the council as well regarding the Phil Pitters property is that we consider the use of this property, that this could also be seen as a potential for DPW yard storage. We do have DPW yard storage that is slated over at the Mac Wayburn area. However, it is quite small. something, talking with my Grosse Pointe colleagues across the board, it is a challenge for all of us in regards to storage of material, whether that's salt, sand, and other things. And so it's something that I think in the best interest of Grosse Pointe Park, we still consider the use of this property, whether it's for DPW, working through the proper procedures of working with the city of Detroit as well in regards to that use. And it's something that I just want council to keep in mind. With that said, that's about all the comments I have, and I'm certain the mayor and I and anyone else would be happy to answer your questions or comments.
Councilmember Reed, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mayor Denner, and thank you for the background that you gave us. And I'd like to thank the city manager for his comments as well. My comments are along the lines of the city managers, and that's establishing best practices going forward. When I'm looking at the packet of information that was given to us about this, there are a few questions, more than a few questions that come to mind. So, I'm proposing that, that we take some corrective action and establish some policies and procedures for deals like this. Our city charter requires that the city attorney prepare or review all contracts. And this, this memorandum of land contract says it was drafted by the former city manager. So contracts, when they're presented to council, should indicate that they were reviewed or drafted by the city attorney, so we have confidence that we are in compliance with our charter. The council approved the purchase back in June of 2016, but by charter, the contract also has to be submitted to council. And I think that the contract was signed the first month I was on council and it wasn't presented. So it's just the procedural, giving the city manager the authority to purchase, and then the contract still has to come back to council by our charter, and that the mayor executes all instruments, which was not the case here. Another sort of corrective action going forward, and I've heard this is something that's been discussed publicly more recently, and our city code, I think it's in our code, I didn't cite the code in my notes, but it directs the city finance clerk to maintain an inventory of all city-owned property. I think that in order to foster that confidence in the residents, that we should maintain that inventory, and it should be available to residents on the website. So there aren't these questions that come up. And then one sort of overarching comment is, and this has been asked to me of residents as this has been out in the community for the last month, is why are we entering into land contracts for the purchase of real estate? Land contracts typically favor the seller and not the buyer. The title doesn't transfer until it's paid in full. It's usually, land contracts are usually reserved for purchasers who cannot acquire traditional financing, and they don't require the steps of traditional financing like an appraisal and other due diligence that we should be employing when we're using public funds to secure property. So I'm not sure, I mean, and there was at least one other land contract that was presented to council, and during my tenure, I'm not in favor of land contracts for city government, and I'm not sure why we would be doing that. So I would ask that administration review that and at least explain to us why that we would ever want to enter into a land contract. And then some of my questions were, what are our plans for the use of the property? And you've addressed that, city manager. So I think that probably the rest of my questions or comments have been addressed. So thank you.
I'll answer one question right away, Councilmember Reed, and thank you for your comments. In research, and I know past council members, Mayor Denner and Councilmember Robson, I keep thinking they're only 2 months away. But
we're still here. We're still here.
You're still here. So excuse me for that. My apologies. But in the past with the city, especially during the recession and other areas, typically The city did go into land contract for the purposes that it was broken up over subsequent years and over fiscal years. And so that was the process they took upon that time in regards to such. So that's what I know from history.
Thank you.
Okay. Good discussion. Councilmember McConnell.
Thank you for the research and the information and the update. Appreciate getting that. I just really have one question that I don't think was addressed, and that is, did we collect, well, I guess, so these are properties, how were property taxes paid, and if so, by whom?
So yes, I can answer that question. In regards to the 4 Alta Road properties, there were property taxes that were collected from the city of Detroit. For those properties together, I believe it was close to $250. And then in regards to the Pitters property altogether, it was about $1,200 per year.
So the city paid the property taxes?
That is correct.
Okay.
Councilmember Fluid.
Thanks. So I have several questions. The first one is to start at the beginning. I believe I stated at our last meeting that I received this information on Sunday night prior to the council meeting. And it has been historically difficult to get information if it's not asked in a public forum. So I believe Councilmember Rellin had this information before I did, but I did not have a lot of notice, and I don't believe he did either. And I don't think I need to be scolded for asking questions about how taxpayer money is spent. So were we able to locate closed session minutes from this June 2016 meeting where this was voted on? I mean, considering that closed session minutes they're only required to be kept for a year, but do we still have them?
No.
So
you are correct, only a year as well, Councilmember Fluid.
right. So if we don't have the minutes, how are we sure that this was voted on in that particular meeting?
This was research done by myself, asking of the past council members as well as current members of council that were as part of that meeting, as well as having to dig into history and talk with the former city manager, just recollecting history here on when this was done. Otherwise, that's the research I had to do.
Okay. One thing I noticed, you gave us the joint development agreement between our city and Detroit. And one thing that was indicated in there is development of a mutually agreed upon master plan for the Kirchable area. Did that happen, or is that being worked on?
That did not happen in regards to this 14 agreement. And I do believe actually in the July agreement, it was either 19 or 20 that was approved by the city of Detroit and Grosse Pointe Park. It also mentioned that as well about a mutually agreed upon master plan between the two cities.
I will say there may or may not be documentation that you found or even looked for, but while it's true that there was never a mutually agreed upon plan, there were some site concepts discussed. There were not just concepts, but actually the drawings that were developed. Actually, they're developed primarily by the city of Detroit. And the former city manager and I did have meetings with the planning department in Detroit where we were looking at some of those concepts, which included medians and things on the altar side to kind of mirror what ended up being our roundabout. There were a number of concepts discussed at the time with their planning department. They weren't acted on beyond whatever we have done on our, at that end of the street. But there were active discussions at the time. Now, personnel have completely changed in Detroit as well. The leadership in their planning department, and with if we needed to. We probably should start from scratch now, but I wanted to let you know that there was an attempt at the time to put something together. It just never came to fruition.
Okay. The possible DPW location has been utilized in several different sites. The use of Phil Pitters was not mentioned when we met 2 years ago to discuss the purchase of Verdonks. And I have some questions about using Phil Pitters. Since we have purchased the property, or since we signed the contract 4 years ago, but Pitters has been allowed to continue to conduct business in that location. Are they paying any fees? Are they leasing? Are they going to lease once the land contract is paid off?
Their intention is to disband those operations, is my understanding. The Pitters Company is focused on other endeavors, not the retail landscape service that they had been operating out of that corner. So in fact, they were, I think they were trying to wind it down at the time that the sale was there, and we felt that it would be beneficial use of business of the property if they were to continue the retail for a period of time. So no, I don't believe that they intend to continue that part.
Have they been using it for free for the last 4 years?
Effectively, because they prefer to actually not do it at all. And we felt it was a benefit to the neighborhood to have it.
If we're using the property on Algonquin to also store DPW vehicles, do we have any kind of lease in place over there?
That's something we have to be researched. I'm not aware of any.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just about to say, not to my knowledge, Councilmember Fluid. I believe this was something that Phil Pitters had allowed our DPW.
That's something the city manager and I have talked about before, is there are a lot of verbal agreements that need to be cleaned up. You know, we need to have insurance, we need to have leases if we're storing very expensive equipment in other locations. It seems like pretty straightforward and obvious to me that we need to protect ourselves in that way. So when I requested last year a list of city properties, because it was my understanding that the city did own a lot of properties, the two 1264 and 1296 Alter were on my list, but the Pitters property was not. Neither were the two properties, the two 1500 properties that the city manager just mentioned earlier. At our last meeting, when this was first brought up, I believe Councilmember Rowland, I believe it was him who asked if the city was using this facility for any city related purpose. And the city manager said, not to my knowledge, no. But now it's everyone's understanding that we are using this as a DPW storage facility, and that we are justified in using the water and sewer fund because we store gravel there. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. One thing, actually, a resident who was looking through these documents online pointed out to me is that in the documentation that you provided to council members and posted with the agenda, you say pursuant to the agreement with Detroit in 2014, these homes were acquired, but these homes were acquired in 2011 and 2012. And we put a lot of city business under the heading of stopping blight or thwarting blight. So I guess the biggest question I have is, what is the overall goal here? The city owns 30 plus properties, most of them in the Tifa district, some of them along Alter in Detroit. What is the long-term goal with these properties? The city manager just said it might be time to put those properties on Alter up for sale. We're in a booming housing market right now. Inventory is low. The city owns $4.5 million worth of property in the Tifa district. Why aren't we selling? What is the long-term goal here?
My recommendation going forward is to look at the properties kind of one by one, depending on their location. To the extent that they're scattered residential properties, I would concur with the city manager's earlier recommendation that we consider trying to resell those. The city has sold some properties over the last few years for redevelopment. There are a couple of new homes that were built on Weyburn, for example, at least one for sure that I can think of, that are an example of that. I think that it is time for the council going forward to take a fresh look at those properties. In some cases, the properties were acquired for redevelopment purposes. I'm not sure how many of those are left. Example of that would be properties that ended up becoming the Huntington Bank property, which obviously are no longer in our inventory. But I would concur that it would be appropriate to look at those scattered properties to see if we can gain interest for redevelopment. And if not, to work with adjacent homeowners or property owners for possible acquisition for the beneficial use of the adjacent properties. It is a very tight district, as you know, and in some cases that would be a benefit.
Well, one of the residents who called in said that previous city councils had a vision, and I don't know what that vision is. We rent some of these properties. I know some of them are vacant, so we're not getting income from these properties. We're not housing families that would hopefully bring more kids into the school district.
I think you're venturing into speculation without specifics. So I would ask you to work with the administration on the inventory of properties so that we could have a more informed discussion about the status of them. We're starting to venture into speculation, and we're off the topic of the Alter Road properties and the Pitters property. It isn't that it isn't worthy of our council discussion. It's just that we have not given the administration the opportunity to prepare for a discussion on those properties, nor have we provided material to this council so that we're in a better informed position to discuss them. So I recommend we table that until a future meeting.
I don't need an answer on it. I'm just, apparently there was some greater vision, and we have all of these properties. We have 30 plus properties. And yeah, it's something I would like us to consider. And if we have to do that one by one, that's completely logical. But if we're hanging on to these properties indefinitely, I would like to know, what the purpose is. Because again, there's potential for property tax revenue. There's potential for new families and income. So I would like to know what that vision is. I think I have just one more question and, two more questions. One is, so on the same day that we signed this land contract, we also signed a consulting services contract. What kind of consulting services has the Pitters organization provided?
I'm not sure I know the answer to that because it was the work would have been with the city manager. City Manager Seisland may know. And I will say that the council considered back in closed door those two agreements together as a part of the agreement to gain control of the Pitters property. So, but I'm not sure. In answer to your question, I don't know on the consulting services side beyond the incenting the retail operation, which I called out earlier.
Okay, well, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because while I'm not going to talk about what we talked about in closed session, because I'm going to follow the rules on that, we all know what we talked about recently in closed session, and I want to make sure that contracts are reviewed and approved the way that they're supposed to be.
I agree.
My last question is for the city attorney. I let him know I was going to be asking this so that he could have a little bit of time to research it if he needed to. And that is, under our charter, was it allowable for the Real Estate Development Committee, for the council as a whole, to cede oversight of these transactions to the Real Estate Development Committee, considering that that committee itself was less than a quorum of city council members.
Right, and Councilmember Flute, you did give me a heads up on that. Although, as I mentioned, I did anticipate that potentially being asked. The council cannot cede authority for certain council action that's provided for in the charter. For example, they could not cede the approval of contracts over $5,000. On the real estate side of things, I think it's charter provision 8.8 puts the buying and selling of real estate as a responsibility of the city manager, with council oversight for the approval of funds. And there are references to the approval of the contracts. So things like approval of funds, approval of the contracts themselves cannot be ceded to a real estate committee. I think it would be appropriate to create something like a real estate committee to assist the city manager maybe, or perhaps, I wasn't there at the time, in evaluating deals, looking for deals, having a public forum for people to address that. But when it comes to the nuts and bolts of city council requirements under the charter, you can't cede those type of responsibilities to a committee. Hopefully that answers your question. If not, I'll try a different way.
Well, I can add to that a little bit. The specific transaction that I'm aware of in some detail was actually referenced, and that's the 1,500 properties, and those were acquired for less than $5,000. So it was city manager prerogative. The primary function of the Real Estate Development Committee at the time was advisory to work with the city manager on the potential for deals and so on, and to effectively on small dollar acquisitions such as the 1,500 properties, formally indicate our agreement that this was something that the city manager could and should do. The idea was to supplement the city manager's ability to think through opportunities for the city. And it, as the city attorney pointed out, it should not and did not, to my knowledge, change who is responsible for what. And it is a fact that some of the two properties where at least some of us, I think they're in here, we've seen minutes, where it was not by accident that the advice of the Real Estate Development Committee was not to exceed $5,000, because that is in fact the limit of city manager prerogative and his authority.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Robson.
Thank you, Mayor. You and I were on council when all these transactions happened, so I'm compelled to obviously speak on that. First, I want to defend the mayor. At the last council meeting, some people said is wishing to study the matter when asked a out of the blue question is entirely appropriate. It was the right thing to do. And it was a service not to the citizens, it was a service to the citizens. It's just plain common sense. So those critics that say he was doing something wrong, it's nonsense, it's garbage. Now, in regards to these acquisitions, it is a good thing for a city to be proactive. And where I came from over the history is the issue of blight. I've been in the city for 45 years. One reason why I ran many years ago is because of the issue of blight. And I encourage council administrations to be proactive, and they were. And it's all for good reasons. And looking back on it, it was the right decision, 100%. The city has always been proactive in acquisitions. Other acquisitions, the city acquired like the old Deck Bar, a liquor store. Some might not remember, they didn't even live in the city at the time, but they like to criticize a lot. Well, let me tell you, that was blight times 5. And the city took action. We bought that property. And that property was obviously in the city of Detroit. Pitter's property, from day one, the reason why I approved it was to be proactive. I live in the Northwest sector. I'm worried about blight. I'm worried about blight on Weyburn, so I acted in defense of the residents on Weyburn, on the west side of Weyburn. If we own that property, we have control over that property. And that's where I was coming. Where would that property be now? If we didn't own it, we can only speculate. Maybe something nice would be there. Maybe it'd be a junk field, old appliances, tires, who knows? We do know when we own it and we have control. I recall acquiring the Esquire Theater on Jefferson years ago. You know what? We paid too much for that theater, but it was a good proactive move. The owner at the time was threatening to play X-rated movies. So yes, we paid too much for it, but history shows it was a good decision. So, you know, we've been getting punched a lot, but last time I looked, this is a pretty good damn city. Just recently, we did get another positive rating as Grosse Pointe Park being the best community in the state of Michigan. This is no accident. It's work, cooperation with city councils, city administrations, and the citizens. And we have a great city and we have a great future. You know, this narrative that pre-2019 councils and administrations are corrupt and nefarious, it's a tired narrative, a childish narrative, and a wrong narrative. I've lived in the park for 45 years. I've seen a lot of good things. It's still a great city. It's going to continue to be a great city. If anybody wants to discuss that with me over a beer or a cup of coffee, I'm glad to accommodate. My home phone number is 313-885-1099. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Hodges.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just briefly, I just would like to point out that yesterday was a different day. Our systems and processes were different, and the research shows that there was nothing malicious going on, and it isn't what people have made it out to be. You simply can't knit together a view of the past from minutes alone. You must understand the challenges that were faced at the time, what our corridors looked like, the urgent need to stifle and contain blight, how seriously property values were deteriorating, and the tools that were available back then. Now, wearing my fiduciary hat, which is the most important one, and given the outcome of all of this research, it is clear to me that at worst, we were sloppy, but certainly acting in the best interest of Grosse Pointe Park. The good news is we aren't sloppy anymore, and we won't be in the future as we continuously improve under our leadership today. We can no longer undermine our administration, fuel mistrust in the community, or demonize people. We have to move forward. And yes, it is time to do exactly that. So I'm going to say something very important and very succinctly. We need to move on now. We need to put our energy toward improving processes and finding real solutions to big problems. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think I'm going to close out this session. I think we've drained it. And let's move on to the next item of business under unfinished business, vacation of Weyburn and the alley. For this, I'm going to turn it over to the city attorney to introduce, just as a reminder. The intent to vacate was announced and presented at the last council meeting. And it is our responsibility now to act on that resolution. So city attorney, would you like to comment and introduce the matter?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thank you, Mayor. So tonight before us is the vote on the vacation of the portion of Weyburn Street that's described in the resolution. As you'll recall, at our last meeting and per the charter, the resolution was introduced. This is the time and place that's been noticed to the public to object to the, potentially object or to support the vacation of Weyburn Street. That's also required under the charter. And so at this time, now that we've had sufficient time, notice, and the opportunity, it's presented to you, the city council, to vote on the measure for vacation. I know Councilmember McConnell had pointed out, and I'm sorry for this, a typographical error in one of the whereas provisions, trying to find it now, where it refers to a water treatment facility, that should be changed. The initials are correct, DPW, but that should be changed to the Public Works facility, and that minor typographical error will be edited before the resolution is finalized. But with that, the resolution is before the council for a vote. Obviously, if there are any questions, I'm happy, or the administration is happy to answer those.
Okay, let's put a motion on the floor to adopt the resolution with the modification noted by city attorney. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution as presented?
So moved.
Is there support? I'll support. Discussion. Councilmember Fluid.
So it's my understanding that probably comparing this site plan to the site plan that we have for DPW is that we need all of the space available for the DPW project. I am glad to see that there is a plan to keep the sidewalk open there, because I think it is helpful for those residents to have access up to MAC and up to those businesses. One thing that I noted when we had the discussion on the proposed MAC or proposed Wayburn development that ultimately was tabled is that there wasn't enough parking for that fourplex that was proposed for that area. And they were concerned about emergency vehicle access and turnaround and that kind of thing. You know, would it make sense to, for the purposes of that development, to open up that street and to allow access so that that new development could go in? Or is there truly no room for that in the way that the site plan for the DPW has been proposed?
My belief is that there's not adequate space to provide for that right away. However, there is adequate space, and it had been laid out to provide for emergency vehicle access and larger vehicle turnaround. It wasn't adequately provided for in the site plan that was before the Planning Commission for that condo development or the apartment development. And that's one of the things that I would strongly recommend be corrected to our satisfaction before that site plan is approved. So for the security of our equipment, and also the adequate size of the yard and parking areas that's required by our Public Works Department, I think that the site plan for DPW was developed and approved consistent with this vacation, for very good reasons.
So, and the DPW site plan obviously came before that development site plan, but it's your belief that the development will be able to tweak its plan to make the space that they have available for the road work?
My belief that we should insist on it.
And to answer your question, Councilmember Fluid, this is something that I've had a lot of discussions with the developer of that area. In that, there obviously, we did some engineering in regards to making sure that a fire truck could turn around if had to. I know, I believe a commission member also asked about a bus, could that turn around in that, we'll call it the T area of there. And that's something that we discussed as well with the developer, that, it's something that they're going to have to consider, obviously, as part of having that land, but it's something that, they are working with.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else before we call the question? Councilmember McConnell.
So just to clarify, you were saying that we should insist on that to be included. So do we have something where that's already accounted for, incorporated, or are we acting before?
Well, the site plan that was presented by the Planning Commission did allow for a T turnaround that was engineered to be adequate for the size of vehicles that were just discussed. And it made use of, essentially the city easement to maximum benefit. The last site plan from the developer did not accommodate that, particularly in the areas of the city easement. And that's what needs to be accommodated, consistent with the DPW site plan that was reviewed and approved by the Planning Commission.
And Councilmember McConnell also to comment, this was something that obviously with the allowance of the public sidewalk from that corner of Wayburn to Mack Avenue, that's something that they're going to add into their future site plan that goes before the Planning Commission.
Okay, but so it hasn't happened yet, but you all have asked for it. Is that?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
Okay. With that, we have a motion on the floor to complete the vacation. Clerk Playhead, please call the roll.
Councilmember Reed,
Yes.
McConnell,
Yes.
Hodges,
Yes.
Robson,
Yes.
Blewett,
Yes.
and Mayor Denner.
Yes, motion passes. Thank you. This is where we get to council comment on unfinished business. There will be another council comment on new business later, but on unfinished business, is there any further council comment? We've had, I think we've drained all the topics that got us to this point. Okay, let's move on to new business. The first item of new business has been foreshadowed for us already by the Deputy Director of Public Safety, but this is the official time that we need to consider it in light of our recently adopted gift policies. So with that, I'll ask Deputy Chief Bostek to briefly reintroduce the topic, and we'll go from there to put a motion on the floor to accept the gift as documented in your package. So Deputy Director Bostek, the floor is yours again.
Thank you, Mayor Denner. In summary, public safety is a profession that requires its members to be physically fit. For this reason, most police and fire departments around the country have modern, up-to-date fitness centers and encourage officers to work out regularly. Fitness room here at our public safety department building is not only antiquated, but some of the equipment is inoperable and sometimes dangerous. For many years, park personnel would pool our own money to buy a particular piece of equipment, or we would receive hand-me-downs from neighbors or residents of the park. With the acceptance of the foundation's donation, we will be able to provide our officers with the new state-of-the-art exercise equipment to ensure our employees are provided with a welcoming, safe environment to work out. And in your packets, you have photographs of our current fitness center, as well as the computer renderings of what it's going to look like.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. I think it'll be great. Can I get a motion to accept the donation consistent with the documentation before you and the donation application form, which is included?
So moved.
Support. We got two moves. Well, we have a move and a support. I think we sorted that out. Is there any discussion? I think it's going to be a terrific facility for public safeties, but Councilmember Reed.
Just a question, what's the timeline for completion, Deputy Director Bostek?
Speaking with the vendors that we've gotten quotes, 90% of the equipment is already in stock. So once we get the okay and the blessing from council to accept this donation, then I would say within a month we could be in our new facility.
Great, that's excellent.
Yep, thank you.
Awesome. Anything else before we call the question? Councilmember Hodges.
I would just like to point out, Mayor Denner, I've spoken about the importance of partnerships many times in the past, and there's two significant ones that are coming together tonight. The generous philanthropists, who are also our friends and neighbors, and our law enforcement team. And I was able to witness firsthand the quality of that law enforcement team during a ride-along Friday night. We discussed all of the tough issues: race, hiring, equipment needs, safety, etc. And I witnessed the good judgment that they showed during every interaction. I also learned a lot. I noticed the officer, when approaching the vehicle we had pulled over, would lay his hand on the back side of the car. And when I asked him why he did that, he said his one was he wanted to make sure the hatch wasn't going to open and somebody was going to pop out. And the other item, and I hope everybody listens really closely to this, was he puts his hand there to leave his fingerprint and his DNA in case something bad were to happen to him. Think about that. That's what they face every day. I also learned they need simple things like showers that free them of toxic chemicals, building improvements that enable their equipment to function properly, and opportunities to ensure they are the fittest they can be to keep us and themselves safe. And thanks to that other important partner, the one with partnership, the one we have with philanthropy, we have the opportunity to deliver on that tonight. So with this approval, we can add to the list of donor-funded projects that lead to our quality of life without impacting the general fund. Thank you to our Grosse Pointe Park Foundation. Thank you to our law enforcement team, especially those that tolerated me Friday night, and also to Chief Gerald and Deputy Chief Bostek and City Manager Seisland. You should know that you have the support of that team and the respect of that law enforcement team, which is a big accomplishment and tells me we are headed in the right direction. And I'll be voting yes tonight because that's how you get stuff done. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else before we call the question? Councilmember Fluid.
Yes, this was something I didn't really think about until this was presented to us. I had heard from Councilmember McConnell when she visited the public safety building shortly after she was appointed to her position, that their gym was not in good shape. And honestly, I think there's no disagreement here that it's something that our officers need. And certainly in the future, if there's anything like that our public safety department needs, I hope that they could bring that to council and we could talk about a way to find some money in the budget and provide that for them.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, let's call the question. Clerk Blayhut, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Reed,
Yes.
McConnell,
Yes.
Hodges,
Yes.
Robson,
Yes.
Blewett,
Yes.
and Mayor Denner.
Yes, motion passes. We have accepted the donation and we're well on our way to improving the fitness center for our officers. So good work, and thank you very much to the Grosse Pointe Park Foundation for continuing to support our city with improvements and capital improvements. The next item on the agenda is a sewer update. And I'll start with our city manager, Nick Seisland, and to kick it off and give us an update on activities related to work that is underway in improving our underground infrastructure for sewer in our sewer systems. City manager Seisland.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Denner. And with me tonight is our city engineer, Patrick Droz, who's also available right now. And I'll just have a brief comment before he introduces both agenda topics that are for us tonight. Mr. Droz and I and our DPW department are working diligently, looking to find solutions and corrections to our sewer and understanding it further. And so with that said, you know, OHM Advisors has been providing us monthly progress reports, which I generally appreciate, and I hope the public does as well in regards to where we're at with city activities. And in the months ahead, you're going to see much more information. So I want to thank Patrick and his team for that. And so with that said, I'll let Patrick take it away from me.
Yes, thank you, Manager Seisland and Mayor Denner. Tonight in the packet, starting on page 123 of your packet, you will find our monthly update for September. This follows our format that we've used in the prior meeting. We'll just continue to carry forward the show, major items that we're working on and what progress has been made, or if there's any areas that we're not seeing the progress that we had hoped month over month. So the first item that we have of note is the sewer televising and manhole condition assessment bidding document. That'll actually be the next item on the agenda that we'll request council action for. But if you go back to our special meeting in August, that was one of the first major activities that we had suggested. And at that time, we had that estimated around a $1.2 to $1.3 million bid item, which you'll see in the next item. We received very favorable bids for that. The next item is our update on coordination with agencies. The most significant update I'll note for council and administration is that we do have a meeting set this week to meet with Great Lakes Water Authority, as well as several other East Side partners, including the city of Detroit, all of the points, as well, of course, with Great Lakes Water Authority to discuss really it's more of a roundtable of sharing what types of activities are being advanced. Certainly, the other points are looking at other alternatives for how they deal with their particular problems, and GLWA is as well. So one of the main things that we'll be discussing there is how those different activities might complement each other, if there's any that potentially are redundant, to really kind of tease that out. And then probably the biggest thing is some of SEMCOG's work with projecting what precipitation events look like going forward, including some fairly interesting what they're calling end of century estimates for what we would term a 100-year event to be 100 years from now. So that'll be, I think, a pretty robust discussion because that's really going to plug right into our level of service discussion that we'll be having as a community as we move forward with the sewer model development. The next item is an update is downspout disconnections. In speaking with Manager Seisland and the DPW staff, one of the ideas brought forth was to utilize a process that was used for the lead service line evaluations throughout the community, using that type of format where residents can schedule inspections with DPW to really assess the conditions within their homes, identify whether a downspout is truly connected or not, and to then move that right into a program where a resident could either do the work themselves, or if they need help, have resources in place. So you'll see, starting on page 126 of the packet, is an example flyer that we put together to help explain the necessity of disconnecting the downspout, and then provide some fairly user-friendly resources for those that feel inclined to make it a DIY project. They want to do it themselves. We'll also have potential opportunities if certain contractors might be good for this, to potentially connect the dots between residents and contractors that could do that. The goal is to really make this first connection a productive one to help get people to understand why a downspout disconnection is important, and then what some of their options might be if they're not familiar with what could happen out there. The next item for an update is our model development. At the last meeting, the council authorized initiation of that scope of work. And so we've been working on that, as well as the flow metering work, doing field evaluations to essentially verify what we have right now in what's called our GIS data, which is basically an electronic map of the city sewer system, confirm whether that data is accurate. And there's been a few areas where we've learned some things additional to what we have on the record. So that'll be in addition to the televising work that'll be underway. All this information really starts to just really boost our understanding of the system, and it'll just make the model, when we get that up and running, that more effective in developing alternatives for creating additional resiliency in the system. The next item is our flow metering topic. Similar to what we talked about last meeting, where we were planning to have bidding documents out. We will be doing the same with the flow metering program. Based on our evaluations in the field, we are feeling that that focusing meters on Jefferson Avenue with a few sub meters located north and south will help us to really ensure we have a model that is well calibrated. So when we do analysis, we can compare that with real existing data. So what we anticipate you seeing in the next council packet would be another recommendation letter forward. And we will put that out to bid on Mitten as well, to get as much bid traffic as we can on that. The next topic is our communication plan. With the work likely starting in the next several weeks with the closed circuit television survey, this is going to be a citywide effort. The goal would be is if council does elect to move forward with this work, that contractors will be visiting every foot of pipe within the city. So that is going to mean, in many instances, contractors working in rear yard areas. So making sure that the public is aware of that work, what it is intended to do, when contractors may be in their backyard and when they shouldn't be. Having all that information out in front of that work will help the community understand the importance of it. and not be surprised if they happen to see a contractor in a rear yard area. There are easements in rear yard areas for the sewers, so the city has rights to access that, but it's still just best practice to let people know if you're going to be in somebody's backyard. So we're suggesting a combination of door hangers, blasts on social media, newsletters, that type of thing, just to let the community know when the work's happening. And that's kind of really our first touches that we'll be having from this program from a community engagement standpoint. We just laid out a few different events and outreach methods that we would propose to use as we move forward through this. Obviously, when we're in people's properties, that's a very personal and individual point of contact. So, individual door hangers are important to make sure people are seeing that. But as we get more to the level of service and really entering into a conversation with the community, those are more broad-based, much like you would have with the master plan, trying to get that information out to as many people as possible so they can participate, whether it's via an online survey or an actual workshop. Those will be some of the things we'll be exploring. Lastly, on a more general basis, things like you see with the downspout disconnection flyer, we would propose to put together similar type of documentation as we move forward. If there are other things that residents are having questions about, for example, of like how to reduce impervious surface on a property, why that's important, we could put together a similar type of flyer like that. And the goal for all of this is to get this centrally located to a website right on the city's webpage that could be updated regularly, just so folks can understand what's going on. And we can even have up-to-date maps on there. Our goal working with our contractors is to be orderly. So we're not all over the city. We're working in certain areas so people can know when to expect a contractor within various areas. Our last item is just a look ahead of what we anticipate completing over the next month. Assuming council agrees to move forward with the closed circuit television contractor, manhole inspector contract, we would expect a pre-construction meeting to begin within the next several weeks, and then to issue a flow metering bid document with recommendations back to council. And then, as we also mentioned, DPW initiating field efforts to identify downspouts within the community. So with that, I'll pause. If there's any questions, I can turn it back over to Manager Seisler and Mayor Denner.
Okay, Councilmember Reed, you have a question for the city engineer.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Droz. Thank you for that report. One of the recurring concerns that I'm hearing from residents is, what is GLEWA doing? We had major storms last week, and we received a notice from GLEWA that they anticipated potential, I can't remember the exact word, but power induced capacities, or some vague term that created a lot of anxiety among, here among the residents. So I appreciate the information gathering, but I think residents also would like to hear, what is Great Lakes Water Authority doing? Because certainly the thought is that we can spend a lot of money fixing our system, but if Great Lakes Water Authority is not doing their part, and their partners are not doing their part, then we're left with the same problem.
Absolutely. So last week, as you mentioned, Councilmember Reed, a notice was put out by Great Lakes Water Authority stating essentially that the Frude pumping station, which is the same station that had issues back in June, was still having power issues. And at that time, our understanding was that they were working, as they phrased it, with their outside energy suppliers, that being Public Lighting Authority and potentially DTE as well, to shore up that power. Obviously, that reliability of the downstream system is as important as anything we do within the park itself. That's where everything goes. If they are unable to drain what is pumped to them, then it's a significant limitation what we can do. So that is certainly one of the things that we will bring up at our meeting on Wednesday with GLWA is for a formal update on that. Part of what has been done, they indicated that they did basically upgrade their equipment within those stations to monitor the quality of power being delivered. So in this case, they were able to identify that there was an issue in advance of the event, which allowed them to get their power supplier on site. But I think for everyone's level of comfort, I think this is an issue that has always been in place. So getting an update as to when it's actually going to be fixed will be one of the things that we'll talk about on Wednesday and hopefully report back to council. Manager Seisland?
Yeah, I just, Patrick hit the nail on the head. I just wanted to touch as well for the public and Councilmember Reed that as soon as the city was notified in regards to this food pumping station issue, I immediately got a hold of Sue Coffey, the interim CEO of Great Lakes Water Authority, that this was a great concern for myself and the residents of Grosse Pointe Park to please be transparent in letting the public know of this issue. This is something, as Patrick said, we're going to be bringing up in our meeting because this is not acceptable to us anymore. I mean, this is something that we need to demand greater accountability of our public utilities as well. This is something that I'm going to be bringing up with Eagle, that it is an extreme concern for me, considering that we keep having these issues here, and so I just wanted to let you know.
I have just one more question and one comment, and then I'll cede my time if that's okay. The question is with the televising, and we brought this up at our special meeting. As I'm reading this report, it's a televising of the sanitary system, but we also discussed televising the storm system. Is that in the works as well?
So at this time, what we're looking to do is televising the sanitary side of this right now. I know Mr. Droz and OHM do have a current storm model right now. That's something that they're looking to further update, but at this time, just the closed circuit television is just of the sanitary. Okay, and then the comment, and this would go under your information gathering coordination with agencies. In talking with residents, and one resident in particular has suggested that we enlist the help of the residents to map our sewer and storm problem areas because they know. So as part of our communication plan, if we can incorporate information gathering from the residents, because they know where the water's pooling, where the manhole covers are blowing, or in real time they're experiencing it. So if we can add that to information gathering and somehow add that to our communication piece, I think we would get a lot of help and a lot of good data from doing that. And that's all I have. I will see. Just to comment on that real quick, that's a great suggestion, and it's something that Mr. Droz and I discussed as well as part of OHM's communication strategy, is creating what we're calling a story map. And so residents that have pictures, or let's say they're seeing the manhole covers pop up, or your boots on the ground, you're able to tell us where we can't be all at one time of what you're noticing and seeing. So this is something that's going to be helpful to our OHM advisors when they're looking at this entire sewer map, because yes, we may have the closed circuit television. However, we might be able to have a further story in regards. So I would highly encourage that resident that reached out to you and others that as we move forward, this is something that we'll be communicating to the public. And so if you could please save your pictures and videos, that would be extremely helpful for the city and its engineers.
That's absolutely something that we've actually identified. It's actually our fourth item under the communication plan. Would be that information gathering survey. So as Nick mentioned, using story maps, which actually give an actual GPS point. So if you're using your phone, it can load your GIS point. So that becomes really relevant data for us as part of calibration. I mean, the model is one thing, but oftentimes, especially in these extreme events, having a photo or a measurement, a lot of people get measurements. That's valuable data to have. Just to make sure that the findings of our model make sense with what we're seeing out in the field.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Hodges.
A question for you, Mr. Mayor. As solutions to the concerns that have just brought forward, I have two resolutions I was going to recommend this body consider. I had intended on bringing them up during new council comment, but if you think because they're so closely in alignment, I should do that now, I'd be happy to. So I look to you for guidance on that.
I'm not sure what the topic is. I think we should stick with the business before us. And we won't be in a position to act on any resolutions since we don't already have them before us. So I would say that the proper way would be to perhaps introduce the topic if you wish, but to work with the administration for anything that we might want to bring to council in the form of a resolution.
Right, I wasn't intending on actually bringing the actual resolution, actually providing direction to the administration to bring them to us at the October meeting.
Okay. Fair enough. Since I don't know what you're gonna
Right,
bring up.
Oh, here, I'll
All I
lay
can
it
say
on you.
is I'm looking forward to the October meeting, and I think that's probably the most productive thing to do.
Okay, I'll keep it brief. And it's all under the umbrella of wanting to manage for results and getting stuff done, right? So I'd like to recommend that we as the governing body effectively serve our purpose by providing the administration with the necessary tools that will support accelerated progress in the area. You know, we're not engineers, but we do have the power to give him tools that help him get his job done on our behalf. So I'd like to ask that this body direct the administration to prepare two resolutions for consideration at the October meeting. The first would be a resolution to Eagle stating the importance of expediting approval of the extreme emergency relief valve. GLEWA has proven that we can't wait for them and we need to take matters in our own hands based on the actions hitherto. So this must happen. And it's my opinion, the administration needs the power of its governing body behind it to get that done. So that'd be resolution number one. Resolution number two would be that we pass one requesting our peer Grosse Pointes to join us in demanding accountability from DTE, the Public Service Commission, and other bodies that can be advanced to the state legislature and any others with decision-making authority. I think these resolutions need to be impactful and in alignment with the recommendations of OHM, full of data and figures, and a clear demonstration of how serious we are about getting stuff done. And which is also why I think the administration would need some time to prepare these two resolutions so that they can be as substantive as possible. But in summary, number one would be to Eagle in light of GLEWA's shortcomings. And the second one would be to enable us to rally with our peer communities to provide that careful and strategic pressure that is necessary to the various bodies that have oversight and influence in this regard.
Okay, thanks. I'll ask you to work with the administration on that further detail. Both those topics I know are being pursued by the administration already in terms of actions, but perhaps the governing body, but the council having a vote could add some weight to it. I saw another hand up a moment ago, Councilman McConnell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just on that point, I think it would be good if City Manager Seisland could just clarify what we heard at one of our previous meetings as it relates to what you already talked about with Eagle and what the timeline is for us to be able to pursue that. The emergency release valve, because there is a lot of confusion in the community about that. So if you could just clarify on that point, and then I have a couple questions.
Okay, I'll do my best to give a high-level overview of the EERV. The EERV stands for Extreme Emergency Release Valve. And what this is for sanitary discharge into Lake St. Clair only. The proposed idea behind the EERV, which is our storm pump station over at Patterson or 3 Mile Park, is that we would connect a sanitary line to the storm line that flows to Patterson Park and then would discharge out into Lake St. Clair. What the intent behind this project is that this would be for something that is in the case of only extreme emergencies. And that's something that Mr. Droz and I have discussed in regards to Eagle's requirements that, they're asking for what is that threshold, is it so many inches, is it so many year event, and that we're, our hope and intent, obviously, and we'll pray with Mother Nature, is that, we only have to use said device very, very, very little. This is not something that we want to use that had been done previously with Fox Creek, in the past. This is something that would be used only in extreme circumstances. In regards to how this all started, it was done by discussed by the previous administration. I then took on the role as city manager, and immediately at that time, I asked for Eagle to have a meeting with myself and our DPW and engineers to understand the EERV and what those requirements are. However, it was a little disappointing that at our request for a meeting with, it was DEQ at that time, we were delayed consistently. We had asked for meetings, they were not happening. OHM advisors then came on board, and at that time, we had worked with OHM advisors to look at two solutions for additional discharge capacity. One is the EERV, and the other two is the DRI, or it's called Detroit River Interceptor. That Detroit River Interceptor runs under Jefferson Avenue, which takes our necessary flow from our Jefferson Sanitary Station down to Great Lakes Water Authority. The intent with those two studies was to look at, okay, we have these two options, here's option one, option two. We then had, after another request of a meeting with Eagle, we had a meeting, and it was of their mindset at the time that we pursue the DRI as the option, because it was their understanding too that there was some flow capacity that we could put into there. And so after some work from OHM advisors and our DPW department, that was the route we were looking to pursue, was going into the DRI, because it was right there and we have the infrastructure to do so. However, due to the high water levels that we had been experiencing, it looked as if there was some infiltration into the DRI from the high water levels of the Detroit River, that in unknown spots, probably downstream from us, in some areas of Detroit or others, that we can't pump additional sanitary into that line if it's already full. So we then reverted back to, let's take a look at this extreme emergency release valve. Afterwards, we then, after these most recent storm events, I immediately demanded a meeting with Eagle, in that we needed to discuss the EERV, and that this was our option. Other communities do have some in the Grosse Pointes, particularly Grosse Pointe Shores and Grosse Pointe Woods. And what they have is when they discharge, they are not fined when it comes to discharging, because they have that already grandfathered in, and all they have to do is report to Eagle in regards to how much sanitary flow went out into Lake St. Clair. And so after that meeting with Eagle, we asked for what are the steps that we need to take, and through our model that we had with OHM advisors, to see this through. At that time, Eagle wanted us to pursue, and I had updated in the previous council meeting, that their first opinion is that we needed to pursue downspout disconnection. We then did so as well. We did that, and we also outlined a certain number of agenda items, we'll call it, for what will it take for us to get to the extreme emergency release valve. And so I'm going to say there's probably about 10 items. Part of that is here tonight. The closed circuit television and sewer cleaning is one of those that is in that action item. The flow metering is another that is in that action item, which will further help us in developing a model in regards to what is that anticipated action that we take in regards to opening up the extreme emergency release valve. And so, we had been going back and forth with Eagle, really pushing on them, our concern in regards to future storm events from these previous ones that had happened, and that, our residents are tired of this. We need to come to a solution. And to Eagle's credit, they have been more amenable to this solution, where previously they had not been. They had kind of looked for, to please look at other solutions. But obviously with these storm events, Eagle has communicated to Southeast Michigan communities that they are more willing to work with us. And so we keep pushing forward with them in regards to pursuing that permit. And it's something that, as part of the most recent food discussion or incident that just happened, this just speaks to only more of why we need to control our own destiny. Unfortunately, we can see that, we cannot always rely on, some of our public utilities. And so I personally believe, and I know our DPW residents and our engineers, that it's in our best interest to pursue our own destiny. Sorry, that was long, but
no, that was actually great. I really appreciate that because, like I said, there's so much confusion out there, and it's a very detailed timeline. It gets us up to speed, and it also helps. I hope residents understand the steps that have to take place in order for us to get there. So I appreciate you walking us through that. I also appreciate that we're going to have up-to-date mapping, I wanted to ask, as it relates to the downspout disconnect, if we could include, and I think I talked to you about this already, the information about the opportunity for reimbursement that we agreed to provide the $50,000 from the rescue fund dollars for residents for downspout disconnection or related storm mitigation. So I think it's really important that residents are aware of that opportunity. I talked to a resident whose downspout was underneath their driveway, so not everyone has a sort of simple option there, so that would be very helpful. And then I had a question about, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, yeah, no, I do appreciate you bringing that up. I know we had discussed that, and that's something that I'm hoping at, at our next meeting that we can have a further update in that. And obviously your support as council members in our pursuit for the EERV and other methods that we can use to leverage, will be greatly helpful.
Absolutely. And then when the manhole inspection, I'm super excited to see the level of public outreach, proactive, all the different communication vehicles. I think that's fantastic. I just wanted to ask if, but it is an invasive process. Is restoration included in the work that's going to be done? Sort of like how DTE comes in, right? And we have these challenges. So are we going to restore residents' lawns as part of this process?
So typically how the manhole inspections and rear yard televising work is, generally speaking, they're accessing the sewers from manholes. There will be instances where we might find a structure that's been buried over time. So there's actually items within the bid to adjust that. So if they need to bring it up, a couple inches
Right.
or whatever, that is included. And there's a specification about what needs to be done in terms of putting back grass seed and making sure that the lawns are restored. We'll be evaluating those on a case-by-case basis. There are ones that are pretty easy, but there may be some that are might just become cost prohibitive, and that becomes something we put on a CIP for later projects. The majority of the work in the rear yard, though, is done with lightweight vehicles that really shouldn't have any impact on lawn areas. So that's our hope, is that we're really kind of just leaving footprints, so to speak, and nothing more than that. So if we do have an issue where we potentially find a blockage or something like that that requires immediate action, that's a different conversation and likely a different contractor as well. So that'll be, if we happen to find those things, that'll be an item where we'll have to work with the contractor and figure out if there is some corrective action that needs to be taken. And that would be a little bit above and beyond the initial contract, but at least they will have relationships with contractors that do that type of work, that if it's a small enough thing that can be accommodated in the contract, that's one thing. But if it's something that is larger and needs to be part of a later CIP, that's part of the process as well.
And then just two more things to build on Councilmember Reed's suggestion. I think I mentioned this at a previous meeting as well. I think the survey, of course, as you know, is great, but it might be worth considering maybe empowering some residents as part of an advisory committee. We do have a lot of resident experts in our community. In addition to this, the story arc, they may be helpful in other ways as we move forward through this process. So just something to, I hope you'll consider. And then the last question is on the storm. You mentioned earlier about the storm sewer separation in the alleys. Can you just where does that fit in this process in terms of next steps?
Nick, I don't know if you want to take that one. I can certainly say that it matters a lot from, from the standpoint of getting stormwater flow out of the sanitary system. But Nick, you probably talk a little bit more about.
And I'll address that as well. And so, we touched just a tad in the a road discussion. However, from most of our understanding that the alleys are not separated. They are connected to the sanitary system. And as you've seen with most recent storm events, with a lot of city streets and alleys flooding, that this is an area we obviously would like to dry out of the sanitary system. And so we're actually, DPW is trying to get some bids right now in regards to sewer separation, seeing what those costs are. And that could be something that further the city council, could consider as part of, we'll call it a drying out process. Obviously, we want to do this right, and that if we're going to separate the sewers, we'll wait to pave the road afterwards. But this, in regards to OHM's model right now, this is something that, there could be an identification later down the road. Obviously, the CCTV is probably the most high level thing that we can do right now for understanding our infrastructure. And, we'll see what we find.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Councilmember Fluid.
Thanks. Just a couple of quick things. One thing that I have seen from residents again and again is they don't want to be blamed for their own homes flooding, and they want to know what's being done right now. So we're talking about downspout disconnection. We're talking about asking them to scope their own lines, which I think is reasonable. I think a lot of people suspect that they have damage from the amount of pressure that was in the pipes in June. Are we in a very polite way reminding residents to do the downspout disconnection before we get to these flyers, which I think the flyers are great, but can we go ahead and get that communication out to remind them again about the downspout disconnection and to gently suggest that they get their lines checked out? I know a lot of people already have, and they are finding issues. But I think that's a small step we could take to ask residents to do on their own. And then the other thing I wanted, go ahead.
No, I'll let you go and then I'll go.
Okay. And then the other thing I wanted to ask is, when we're tracking and compiling that information about the areas where we had geysers and just really terrible, the worst of the flooding, are those places where our DPW can scope themselves and make some quick fixes? Are there, while we wait for this full audit to be done, which I am absolutely in favor of, do we have those areas where maybe DPW can put on a Band-Aid or do some cleaning or something like that, where we can at least patch that problem while we're going through this big project, which is going to take a considerable amount of time?
So going to the prior comment and then the next one, absolutely in regards to downspout disconnection, this is something we, when you want to remind residents, this is all kind of a team effort. This is somebody, I'm hoping that, again, maybe tomorrow, I challenge every resident to go walk around their home and see whether or not, take pictures, let our DPW take a look and help you out, and even come to visit the area. Even some other communication, that we'd like to pursue as well is, you said, Councilmember Fluid, about scoping your line at least once a year, and even just the way you landscape your home, grading your mulch away from the home, as well as, your dirt in your area. Obviously, being mindful of your neighbors is something very important, and that, we have to do. And then in regards to, I lost my train of thought. Sorry, Councilmember Fluid, go ahead.
So something that areas that DPW can check out and maybe do some stopgap measures right now.
Okay, yes, thank you. So we do have a sewer, we do have this, it's called a vac truck. It's pretty amazing. It's got a huge tank in it and hose, and that's something that we do use, for cleaning out, it could be some manhole areas as well as the catch basins in the storm. And that's something that our DPW has been doing in reviewing after each of these storm events. When they do pop a manhole right now, they open it up and then sometimes they can go down or take a look further. We do have a small camera that we are able to take a look in the immediate area. However, we don't have one that the CCTV program would initiate, which is, a robot that can go down, miles and miles, or I'll say feet of the sewer line. And so this is something that, I'd like to pursue for the DPW of equipment so that they can have their own tool as well in the future use for further investigating. And oftentimes, if there is something that they find and it's an immediate quick fix, our DPW guys are very capable to handle, and they have done so in the past. And so, yeah.
But is there a plan or do they have the time or capacity to start looking at those areas where we know had really severe flooding and see if there's anything they can do right now?
So a couple of the areas that were identified, we can let's just take a certain block, for example, that was shared on social media or to the city that, hey, it looks like there's an issue here in the area. Immediately, our DPW, if they can go during the storm, will take a look, or we'll go afterwards and pop a manhole, take a look. And oftentimes with some of these storms, they tend to clear what could be, maybe an area that was blocked. And so, it could be during the storm, prior to the storm that's blocked, but afterwards, after opening it up, they can't see anything. And, they use their camera able to take a look. But that's why the CCTV is going to be so helpful, that we can really get down there further and take a look. OHM Advisors has also been out actually looking at areas as well. I've seen their van around City Hall and some other areas, and they're helping as well, looking at those. And in regards to capacity, and if there's anything we can do, it's something that I leave to Pat Thomas and Tom Jenny, that if it's something they believe they can fix, I know these guys can, and they're very capable. And then if as well, there's a capacity issue, they're immediately, their first call is to myself and Mr. Droz in regards to what we need to do next.
Okay,
Thanks.
let's, I think we can close out this status report and update, and good discussion. And thank you, Mr. Droz, for taking us through that. The next item is closely related and requires council action. And that is related to the CCTV program and related sewer cleaning. And I'll ask Nick to introduce that.
Yes, so thank you, Mayor Denner. So as we've just discussed lengthy, and it was a great discussion, thank you. We did receive bids for the sanitary sewer cleaning. We read them aloud at 2 p.m. here at City Hall. Bids were received from 5 bidders, with the base bid pricing ranging from about close to $900,000 to about $2 million. Initially, OHM Advisors had reviewed for us and gave us an estimate that we were looking at about, I believe it was 1.5 or 1.6 was the initial estimate. So to see that number of $883,000 is really pleasing for the city. That obviously we'll be able to direct more funds for other work. And so with that said, I'll let Mr. Droz go ahead and update us a little further.
Thank you, Manager Seisland. As mentioned, we received 5 bids. A low bid was received from Pipe Tech Infrastructure Services out of Livonia, Michigan. As part of due diligence, what we typically do is we phone references and just confirm that the contractor has capacity to meet the intents of the project scope that was laid out within the contract document that's included with the bidding form. And generally speaking, it was all very positive conversations with the contractor themselves. They affirmed that they could start work essentially immediately. And actually had a Grosse Pointe Park resident identified for the project manager for it. So that's always nice to have, somebody from the community managing the project. So they take a little added interest in making sure that they do great work. And generally speaking, from references that we talked to, we reached out to City of Centerline, utilize them, as well as Wayne County and in City of Southfield. So we've contacted them, and generally the references were all very good, that they were organized and methodical in their work. And as we mentioned, with contractors working in rear yard areas, having contractors that are familiar with that and conscientious in how they go about their work is very important. Because there will be times when that work does dislodge blockages and things like that. It can have some unfortunate impacts to basement bathrooms sometimes. So that'll be part of the communication package that goes out. But it's part of the work necessary to make sure these sewers are cleaned out. But generally speaking, positive references. We did want to draw council's attention to the format that was done with the bidding, where we used a base bid, which essentially was, as Nick described it, utilizing motorized robotic cameras to crawl all 43 feet or so, or excuse me, 43 miles of sewer within the city. We also had what we call multi-sensor inspection tool. So if there are situations where we find that the pipes are submerged, whether it's from blockages or sags within the pipes, we can utilize this particular technology, which utilizes a combination of sonar and laser scanning. So things that you can't see because of basically the pipe being underwater, you can still detect with this particular scanning technique. So that's an alternative that we have in the bid. So the contractor gave us pricing for it. At this time, we're not recommending that we add that in just yet, but as we get underway with work, there is a possibility that might become necessary. And that time, depending on the amount of work necessary, we would suggest coming back to council with a potential amendment if that becomes required based on the amount of work to be done.
Okay.
So with that, I can turn it back to Nick.
I was going to say, I think to get this moving along, we should put a motion on the floor to accept the recommendation of the administration, and then we can move on to any further discussion and then call the question. So is there a motion to approve the bid? Councilmember Hodges.
So moved.
Support.
Any further discussion before we call the question? To be clear, this is to approve the moving forward with the low bidder of Pipe Tech Infrastructure Services in the amount of $883,077.37. Is there further council discussion? Councilmember Reed.
Yeah, just I would just ask the administration to discuss the funding mechanism for this project if it is approved.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Reed. So as part of the funding for this project, we are expecting any day now American Rescue Plan dollars that we had discussed in our previous council meeting, and I would recommend that we would use the funds from there. And we also have reserves within our water sewer fund that would help also with that cost. And so we're looking at approximately about $400,000 from the American Rescue Plan, and then the rest would be from our water sewer fund.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If there's no further discussion, let's call the question. Clerk Blayhut, please call the roll.
Councilmember Reed,
Yes.
McConnell,
Yes.
Hodges,
Yes.
Rapson,
Yes.
Blewett,
Yes.
and Mayor Denner.
Yes, motion passes and we can move ahead with this contract, an important step, not only to improve the system, but also a step on the road to our EERV. I'm going to ask council what your pleasure is. We've got a number of items left. I don't think they're really long, but on the other hand, we've been at it for a while. Would you like a recess or do you want to push ahead?
Recess.
Recess. Okay, there's agreement for recess. Let's take, I have almost 9:45. Let's 5 minutes to 10, 9:55. Let's reconvene. So we'll take a short break. See you all in about 10 minutes. Council back. We have council back. We just need the administration, and now we have our city manager. And hopefully our city attorney is there somewhere. And I believe that in about a minute here, we'll resume our meeting. Okay, I now have 9:55 and I call the meeting back into session. We'll proceed with the agenda. The next item on the agenda is DDA appointment. There are 2 board positions with terms expiring this month. The first is a position that has been formerly held by Jay Kennedy, who recently moved from Grosse Pointe Park. So Robert Farhat. Robert Farhat was an applicant for the vacant city council position last year. He is a business professional with a history of volunteerism. His current volunteer activities include being president of the board of directors for Merit Academy on Alter near St. Ambrose, which enabled him to develop relationships with Jefferson East and Detroit officials, which should enhance the DDA's efforts to work synergistically with our Detroit neighbors. I move that Robert Farhat be appointed to a 4-year term on the Downtown Development Authority.
Support.
Call the roll, please. I'm sorry, question, comment, discussion. Councilmember Reed.
One question I have is under the recodified tax increment finance act, the members of the DDA, there must be a majority with an interest in the district. And I just want to make sure that
that is correct. And actually, Jay Kennedy did not live in the district and did not have an interest in the district. So this does not change the balance of that.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Call the question, please.
Councilmember Reed,
Yes.
McConnell,
Yes.
Hodges,
Yes.
Robson,
Yes.
Blewett,
Yes.
and Mayor Denner.
Yes. Robert Farhat has been appointed to the Downtown Development Authority. Andrew Richner. Andrew Richner was first appointed to the DDA board in January 2020 to fill a vacancy. Andrew is an attorney and is a property owner within the DDA district, thus satisfying the statutory requirement that the majority of board members have an interest in the district. I move that Andrew Richner be reappointed to a full 4-year term. Support?
Support.
Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Reed,
Yes.
McConnell,
Yes.
Hodges,
Yes.
Robson, Blewett,
Yes.
and Mayor Denner.
Yes. Andrew Richner has been appointed to a 4-year term on the DDA. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is Planning Commission. Again, there are 2 commissioner positions with terms ending this month. The first is currently occupied by our chair, Malik Goodwin, who was asked not to be reappointed. Matthew Evans. Matthew Evans is currently a vice president with Rockford Construction. That has provided him experience in construction and zoning matters, interfacing with planning commissions in other cities. His background also includes an extensive career in education, including teaching and administration at K-12 schools. He's been a resident of Grosse Pointe Park for 11 years. I move that Matthew Evans be appointed to a 3-year term.
Second. Support.
Any discussion? Councilmember Fluid.
Thanks. So I'm going to vote no on Matthew Evans, and I want to explain why. I've actually met him, and he probably doesn't remember that, but a friend of mine looked at renting a flat from him a couple of years ago, and he was very nice, very soft-spoken man. My concerns are, number one, he indicated that he's never attended a planning commission meeting. Robert Farhat indicated the same about the DDA, but planning commission is just so important and such a complex animal that I think for someone to ask to be appointed, I really feel very strongly that there should be some sort of interest indicated and attendance and research done on the commission before they're appointed to it.
Can I comment on that particular point? I did ask Mr. Evans about his engagement to date, and he did say that while he hasn't been at a commission meeting per se, he has been active in the master planning process and did attend the open house and was engaged through in the master planning effort. So that really was it's not, I agree that he has put in his application, he has not attended an actual meeting. Okay, go on.
And my other issue is, as you know, we have certified planners who have been waiting for quite some time who would like to serve on planning commission. And, you know, right now having only, I know that the statute allows for a mix of backgrounds for those who serve on our planning commission, but my preference is always going to be for someone who is a certified planner, and those people are being overlooked. So it's certainly nothing personal against Matt Evans, but I would prefer someone who has been more engaged in the past.
Okay, to your point about the makeup of the commission, the statute actually encourages some diversity of background to be representative of the community. And in my view, it's counterproductive to have a planning commission full of planners. Having a certified planner is useful and helpful. And we do have that with one of our existing commissioners. And on big projects such as our master plan, clearly we retain additional professionals. So that's in this particular case, because we have a certified planner, I was erring on the side of representative of the community, and also drawing on Mr. Evans' background in construction. Councilmember Reed.
Thank you, Mayor Denner. I am going to vote for Mr. Evans, but I did want to just touch on one of the points raised by Councilmember Fluid, and that is attendance at meetings. We included that on our application. And I think we've slowly ramped up the process for the commission and board appointments. But just in terms of formalizing our processes, that encouraging our applicants to attend the meetings of the boards and commissions that they would like to serve on, to see if they would like to do that. And I will say, based on my service as the council liaison to beautification, that is one of the commissions that they've always asked that people attend their meetings before they decide that they want to serve, to see if it's a good fit. So I think going forward, it's probably good practice for the city to encourage that of applicants, so that people know what they're getting into. So
Okay.
I just wanted to add that comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Robson.
Thank you, Mayor Denner. I've looked at his application. To me, he seems eminently well qualified. He's got a great background, construction background. And he would also lend to the diversity to the planning commission. I think that's very important. I think that's important to all of us. So I will be voting for Mr. Evans.
Okay, fair enough. Are we ready to call it? Well, Councilmember McConnell.
I certainly have respect for his business background, particularly as it relates to construction and project management. I know him, so disclosing that, it's clear that he's eager to get more involved in a number of things tied to the city. I do think it is important that we have certified planners on the commission, and I think we need to do a better job at making sure that when we look to people that we tap those folks equally. I don't view that as a deal breaker, however, if they've had requisite experience within their field. So I just wanted to speak to all of those issues before the vote.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, let's call the question. Clerk Blayhut.
Councilmember Reed,
Yes.
McConnell,
Yes.
Hodges,
Yes.
Robson,
Yes.
Fluid,
No.
and Mayor Denner.
Yes. Matthew Evans has been appointed to the Planning Commission. Moving on to Michelle Lindsay. Michelle Lindsay was first appointed to the Planning Commission in 2019 to fill a vacancy, and currently serves as the vice chair of the commission. She has a history of volunteerism focused primarily on the Grosse Pointe schools and youth sports. She was also active in the efforts to keep Trombley School open as an elementary school. I move that Michelle Lindsay be reappointed to a full 3-year term. Is there support?
Support.
Any discussion? Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, do you know if she has a planning background?
I don't believe that she does. She's part of my representative of the community appointments and was in 2020 as well.
Okay, I'll vote for her anyway.
Call the question, please.
Councilmember Reed,
Yes.
McConnell,
Yes.
Hodges,
Yes.
Robson,
Yes.
Blewett,
Yes.
and Mayor Denner.
Yes, Michelle Lindsay has been reappointed to the Planning Commission. Thank you. There are 2 other areas where I had the opportunity to make appointments this month, but I'm not going to do so, and I want to explain those. The first is the Downspout Appeals Board, which is relevant to our last series of topics on our sewer improvement program. There is a Downspout Appeals Board that's provided for in our new legislation. However, we have not received any applications to date from a resident to be the resident representative on that board. Feel confident in the administration side of that being filled, but I want to encourage some applications from residents. And I'm working with the administration, and I'd like to enlist you all here. If you have acquaintances that you believe are well qualified to serve in this role, to encourage them to put together an application so that I can complete the appeals board in the October meeting. So that's why that one's not here. And then that's understandable, by the way, because this is a new a board that we just created in the last meeting. So that is understandable. And the timing is not hurt by delay, in the sense that, as we just learned in the last topic, we're really just initiating that downspout program with action and outreach with our residents. And so we'll have time to get the board in place before any appeals are actually relevant. And then the final one is the board of review. There is a current vacancy for term ending, which is term ending in December of this year, which is really not too far off. Well, the board of review does allow for an alternate. And I propose to the 2 mayoral candidates that I leave that vacancy in place until December, when the term is ended, so that an individual could be appointed for a full term. The current alternate is Andrew Haar. I've spoken with Mr. Haar, and he is more than willing to participate, as is his duty as the alternate, in all board activities until then. So since there will be no impact on the near-term functioning of the board, I'm going to leave that position open until the term ends in December. With that, we'll move on to the WCA assessment contract, and I'll ask the city manager to and Clerk Blayhut to comment on that. I think start with our city manager, Mr. Seisland.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Denner and members of council. So before you tonight is a WCA or Wayne County Assessing renewal contract. Currently, they're working with the city of Grosse Pointe Park right now and several of our other Grosse Pointe neighbors for assessing services. Attached for your review is this contract, which is an extension which would take effect on October 1st of this year and would go on to September 30th, 2024. Discussing with Clerk or Finance Director Blayhut, WCA assessing has been a really good service for us. We used to have a in-house city assessor that did retire in 2016, and however, that she feels too that their services have been satisfactory for the residents of Grosse Pointe Park. Jane, do you have any further comment regarding this?
Yeah, I can give a little background. Diane Lewis was our city assessor, and in 2015, she got sick and had to retire. And at that time, our city requires a level 3 assessing for our taxable value. She would prepare the rolls and Wayne County would sign off on them. In 2015, Wayne County reduced their staff by a significant amount and told all the communities that they were signing rolls for that they were no longer available to provide that service. So we hired WCA because our city assessor Diane retired and then since passed away, and WCA has been doing a really great job. They fulfill all the requirements. Market crash. There were a lot of things that which all communities probably weren't fulfilling the way they should have been. And WCA is on top of everything. All the fulfillment, they fulfill all the requirements of all the reports that are necessary. So we're really satisfied with their services.
Okay. With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the renewal of the contract with WCA Assessing.
So move.
Support.
Or
Discussion. Councilmember McConnell.
I just wanted to get clarity and on page 2, item 6 and page 3, item 8. They both cite the mayor in this document. And I was just curious why it's not the city manager.
I don't have an answer for that. I don't know if our legal support has an answer to that. All right. Now, point 8 says mayor and or other designated staff, so that's not quite the same.
that's paragraph 8, not 6.
And 6, I just back to 6.
6 says notify the city's mayor of such requirements. So.
I would assume Councilmember McConnell, this is probably a document that they share with other communities, and it's probably just a standard form fill that, they add the mayor in there, but, presumably they're working with myself and Finance Director Blay Hutt for that.
And I would recommend, Nick, I think that's a good point. Just cross that out, put in city manager and initial it, and that should be fine. I can't imagine they'll have an issue with that.
I don't see an issue with that.
Right, and as the current mayor, I don't have an issue with that either.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so we do have, will whoever made the motion, do you accept that amendment?
I do.
Is the seconder accept that amendment?
Yes.
Okay, so we do have the amended motion on the floor. Other discussion, Councilmember Fluid?
My question was just because it is a contract, a legal contract, just to confirm that the city attorney did review it.
I have reviewed it, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else before we call the question? Clerk Blay Hutt, please call the roll.
Councilmember Reed,
Yes.
McConnell,
Yes.
Hodges,
Yes.
Robson,
Yes.
Blewett,
Yes.
and Mayor Denner.
Yes, motion passes. We have renewed our contract with WCA. I agree with all the comments. They've been very good for our city, and I think the city as a whole gets a great deal of benefit from the fact that these are professionals that not only are engaged with us but also with other cities. Moving on to the next one, ordinance 227. I'll ask City Manager Seisland to tell us about that one.
Thank you, Mayor Denner, members of council. So just for full disclosure, I did provide this previous to Councilmember Reed, as she is the chair of the Ordinance Review Committee, and informed that this is just an update of our former ordinance, which was Ordinance 201. And so, we talked and discussed that we could bring this forth to council without an ordinance review meeting. Just a brief summary: in 2012, Grosse Pointe Park adopted FEMA's last floodplain update. The new FEMA maps for 2021 will be effective for the community with the adoption of this ordinance, including the new firm panels and flood insurance study. A failure to have the maps properly adopted tonight and approved before that date will result in suspended from the NFIP on October 22nd. That could mean that flood insurance is no longer available in our community. Some forms of federal disaster assistance are also no longer available. Residents that have flood policies would get letters from their lenders saying their mortgage is due in full. The explanation. I don't know if I need to go any further, but I'm hoping you approve this tonight. As well, I won't read, but we have the firm panels on here that'll be updated. And so in comparison to Ordinance 201, all we're updating tonight is those firm panels that you can view publicly on FEMA's website. So with your consideration, I'd humbly ask that someone approve a motion to update. Oh, before I do that real quick, just as well, Eagle did provide this ordinance to us. This is a form-filled document that I did have Eagle take a look at and ensure that we could bring this to council. And after your consideration tonight, this will then be brought forth to FEMA for compliance. So with that said.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the amended ordinance.
Move.
The new ordinance.
I'll do support.
Okay, so we have a motion with support. Any further discussion? Call the question then. Clerk Playhead, please call the roll.
Councilmember Reed,
Yes.
McConnell,
Yes.
Hodges,
Yes.
Robson,
Yes.
Blewett,
Yes.
and Mayor Denner.
Yes, motion passes. Ordinance 227 has been adopted. Thank you. We now move on to council comment on new business. Council, do you have any comment that you'd like to share with us? Councilmember Fluid.
I have two things. First is to get clarification from the city manager on how many days of the week we have a code enforcement officer working, because he's seen some of the complaints we get from people about various issues. I've noticed just on my street a lot of trees that need to be trimmed back, that I believe the tree branches have to be, I think it's 8 feet above the sidewalk. There are just a lot of kind of loose ends that need to be tied up around town, and we do get those emails from residents. There's a resident on Lake Point who's having a lot of trouble. So how often do we have a code compliance? Just 2 days a week? And
Councilmember Fluid.
that's okay. That's what I thought. But what is the best way to get those items addressed? For them to email code enforcement directly, to email you directly? How can we ensure that these things are getting taken care of?
Okay, well, the best thing is take pictures if you can. Please take pictures if you're a resident, if you have a code enforcement concern, because obviously, our code enforcement officer, she'll come in, she'll be reviewing emails and phone calls. And if at least she has a picture of the issue, that'll be able to help dissect. And that's something that if she needs to get a second opinion from a building official, they'll be able to do so at an expeditious time. And so my humble suggestion is take pictures and to please notify code enforcement at grosspointpark.org, that they, go directly to them. And that, if there's something that, hasn't been responded to, mindful of, they are working 2 days a week, that they could then forward this on to the building department or myself for further clarification. And so, what I see is probably the biggest challenge is, a picture, is it worth 1,000 words? And that's really the case with code enforcement. And so that's truly what would be helpful to us in the city.
Okay, thank you. And then my other item was more of a suggestion, and that's, I feel like we've touched on this in the past, but it would be really great if our recreation department could do online registration for family events. We have so many great events down there, and things that families want to attend and they want to bring their kids to, but not everybody can be at Windmill Point at 8 a.m. on the day that registration opens. And it's particularly hard for, families where both parents are working. So if there's a way that we can move forward on some kind of online registration, I think residents would appreciate that.
I'll definitely check in with Chad and Chris and see if there's something we can do on Rec Pro. And if not, I know they'd be happy to take a look into, because I know it would help them out as well, potentially. So
thanks.
Thanks. Anybody else? Seeing nobody else, I think we can move on off of council comment to public comment, non-agenda items. And I'll turn this back over to our city manager for first written comment and then any verbal comment that we may have. Nick?
Okay, thank you, Mayor Denner. So I do have several written public comments tonight. This non-agenda public comment comes from Mr. Neem Fama on Belfour and Grosse Pointe Park. Due to the lack of professionalism, decorum, character, and respect to not only the council members, the rest of the admin, I'm asking that possible code of conduct and ethics violations on the part of Fluid and Vikas Raylan be looked into. Perhaps a censor. In my opinion, their poor script reading during last council meeting was nothing more than a poorly and immaturely crafted campaign ploy by sitting council members to aid their preferred candidates. IMO, an apology is owed to not only their colleagues, but to the community. Council members Raylan, Fluid ask that you strongly consider not doing the community more harm and resign. This comment comes from Mr. Roy Edmonds, Grosse Pointe Park. I'm writing in support of Mayor Denner and Councilman Jim Robson's many accomplishments and stellar track record of work on the council. I have found both men to be exemplar public servants and decent, honorable citizens. They both have integrity and are honest, hardworking public servants. Any attempt to paint them as otherwise is ill-founded and mean-spirited. I abhor the political gutter sniping that has become a tactic of the Raylan Fluid constituency on the council. Let's restore professionalism, respect, and honesty in the council by rejecting these gotcha moments and ambush tactics. This comment comes from Miss Ann Kraft. I read recently that in 2014, a GPP council member, Greg Theokas, loaned $60,000 to the city manager at the time, Dale Kraniak. How is it permissible for an elected official to loan that much money to a city employee, especially when that elected official is supposed to be overseeing the employee and deciding whether to give that employee raises? It seems wrong. Didn't the city have any rules in place that prohibited this sort of loan? Does the city have rules in place now that would prohibit this sort of loan? This comment comes from Dick and Martha Schroeder of Lake Point, Grosse Pointe Park. First, I'd like to say to the Raylan family, our prayers every night are for a quick return to health for Vikas. We are community first and foremost, and everything else is secondary. We can have our differences, but the well-being of all our families come first. My wife and I were in Kirchville Friday night, and we noticed how vibrant the area was. That wasn't the case not so long ago. There was a state of decline that was creeping into that part of the park. The council that was seated at the time, along with the city manager and benevolent citizens, took actions to change the course of that decline, which has created this rebirth. Property acquisitions, along with an influx of capital, has created the business and surrounding residential properties to rebound in their market values. This rebound has not been isolated to just that area, but has propelled all property values to increase citywide. How can we not be thankful for that? My wife and I have been in the park since 1983, and my wife's family since 1965. We've seen a time when our area was the least desirable of all the points. Now where we are, in my opinion, the most desirable. Please do not let political agendas ruin this momentum. The sniping that is going on in our city is not going unnoticed. This comment comes from Walter K. on Kensington and Grosse Pointe Park. As a park resident for 40 years, I've seen a lack of or decline in services by utilities. Cell phone service goes away as you approach the lake, then switches to a Canadian company. Electrical service is lost several times a year. Rainstorms strike fear into residents' hearts. Property values may decline as Grosse Pointe Park becomes known as the city of flooded basements. Rather than working to address these issues, the council would rather nitpick city operation. Please spend more council time on livability issues and less on members' personal agendas. This comment comes from Drew and Mike Ebbing in Grosse Pointe Park. Once again, we are disgusted by the certain members of the GPP council outlandish behavior. In this specific case, Raylan Fluid, why do these two spend time digging for dirt on Mayor Denner and Councilmember Robson? These two fine men, others have taken GPP from don't live here to the park is great. And if Raylan Fluid and others continue their actions, we say goodbye to the fabulous improvements initiated by Denner, Robson, and other great supporters of the park. This comment comes from Doug and Priscilla Carlson in Grosse Pointe Park. As a teacher in the Detroit public schools for over 30 years, my husband saw firsthand how quickly changes can deteriorate a school. After being shot at, we moved from Detroit to GPP 38 years ago. At that time, we were pleased at how well everyone got along. There was never tension between council members or talk of discrediting accomplishments of present and past councils. We had trust in our local government to do what was best to keep property values up and neighborhoods safe. We were and still are grateful to the vision and leadership of former council members and mayors. Some members of the present council, especially Raylan Fluid, seem to be using outdated and false information to further their candidates, Reed, McConnell, Greer, and Kolar. The cry of transparency when elected has not been applied to their own motives or change our once great and peaceful city. This comment comes from Mr. Al Shahan, GPP resident. As a Grosse Pointe Park citizen for over 35 years, I've had the honor of watching this great community be led by tremendous people. We are the only Grosse Pointe that has two borders with the city of Detroit, and our leaders have done an incredible job of keeping the community members safe, our property values increasing and making a city vibrant. It has not long ago, GPP was voted one of the best places to live in the United States. After witnessing firsthand so many of these accomplishments, I'm just appalled and disappointed to see current council members and the mayor get attacked like they did at the end of the last meeting. What are these attackers trying to accomplish or prove by their false claims? Our community has become one of the best communities in the country because our leaders thought about the community only and not their own agenda. It is embarrassing to see a select selfish few try and destroy many years of hard work and dedication by our leaders, businesses, and residents. Last public comment. This comes from Mr. Eric Goosen in Grosse Pointe Park. I'm writing to express my concern with the apparent ambush that took place last meeting by Raylan and Fluid. That was something that occurred well before either of those two were in council, so they did not have an understanding of what happened. That said, they are purely political with the council opportunity and should not be doing that. Mayor Denner, those are my written public comments, and I'm going to switch my screen now to share for spoken public comment. One moment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I see I do have one comment. Sean, if you could please state your name and city of residence, and please go ahead for us.
Hi, this is actually Amy Greenride, and I am a resident of Grosse Pointe Park. I just wanted to express my gratitude to those council members who have been attacked this evening. Raylon and Fluid, I am grateful for you seeking the truth of the previous transactions of our council. I appreciate your due diligence, and I know 4 years ago is not a distant past because I became a resident here merely 4 years ago. We are raising our young family, and I appreciate your efforts to increase the transparency of what is going on in the background of our municipal government. So thank you.
Thank you. Next public comment, we have Mr. Ron Porter. Ron, if you could state your name and city residence, and please go ahead.
Sure, my name is Ron Porter and I live on Pemberton Road in Grosse Pointe Park. And I would like to address my comments specifically to council members Reeland and Abstentia, Fluid, Reed, and McConnell. And that is to keep trying to bring competent, responsive, transparent government to Grosse Pointe Park. You've heard from a small number of local residents who want to blame you for the disastrous condition of the city. They keep insisting that everything is great, everything is wonderful. At the same time, we know, those of us who've lived here, that we can now count on regular visits of multiple feet of water in our basements. We have an unsafe water system that needs millions of dollars of repair. And we have a city marina that also needs millions of dollars of repair, and we have no way to fund it. Despite paying the highest tax rate permissible under Michigan law, this city runs large deficits now and is presently running through reserves and using federal handouts to fund sewer studies and sewer improvements. Certainly that's not what we bargained for when we elected Mayors Denner, Theokas, and allowed Dale Craniac to serve. They promised efficient government and low taxes. They brought us inefficient government, dangerous infrastructure, and high taxes. And it's ironic that people don't want to understand how we got in this position. The only way we're going to avoid repeating this fiasco of the last 20 years is to understand how we got here in the first place. But yet there are people on council and residents who say, no, 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 you can't know the truth because we don't want you to. Let's just move on. Let's pretend everything is great, but everything isn't great. We have serious problems in the park and we need serious people who will address them. And I think everybody knows who on council is serious about addressing those problems. And I want to support those people. So I say kudos to those who are continuing to work for competent, transparent government in Grosse Pointe Park. And to those of you who are saying, let's move on, stop talking about it, we don't need to know what happened. I ask, what are you hiding? And I think we know what you're hiding. One thing we learned today was that within a couple of months of the 2016 flood, the city spent $400,000 from the city, from the sewer fund on property on Alter Road. So, you know, we know where the focus was. It wasn't on the sewers. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Denner, I have no further public comment.
Okay, thank you, City Manager. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Support?
Support.
Signify your support by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We are adjourned. Council, thank you, and have a good rest of your evening.
Night.
Good night.